Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this discussion on SIM binding for social media and messaging. It's a policy change that looks small on paper. Saying what's the problem with connecting your social media or your messaging account to a SIM card when when you're using the same phone, and that can potentially prevent fraud. But I think it's also symptomatic of a broader issue that we're seeing that affects almost every internet user and business in India. Messaging apps and social media are now key to our day-to-day lives. We consume content on them. We communicate with friends and family through them. We use them across devices. I use, for example, on my desktop as well when I'm working to coordinate with everyone in the team. Um, I have a tablet without a SIM uh, that has my WhatsApp and Telegram. And startups run customer support on them. Small businesses automate sales. I've bought products that are entirely through messaging with only a payment link connected to it and no not going on to the web for anything else. There are behaviors that are being formed in terms of us getting even our flight tickets via PDF on messaging apps. And when you travel, quite often I've just bought international SIMs instead of getting, uh, uh, sort of roaming, international roaming on my phone. So, uh, how we use phones and how we use messaging is critical to our day-to-day lives. The Department of Telecommunications issued an order asking these apps to work only when a user's SIM is physically present in the device and log people out of the web and desktop apps access after every 6 hours. And this was framed as a fraud prevention move. And it is essentially, the first move from the DOT, which looks at messaging apps and social media. Um, uh, but it also disrupts the core online behavior in terms of multi-device use, remote work, tablets without SIMs, automated business messaging, and this entire ecosystem that we rely on daily. Um, at the same time, it's not to say that fraud in India is not a concern. We've been raising this issue for many, many years. It comes through social engineering, spoofed calls, digital arrests, the leaked databases, the phishing, and not from necessarily from people using messaging apps, but also on you get them on SMSs as well, right? In fact, a large majority of messaging for fraud has been on SMSs, and it's only recently begun, as far as I can tell, moving to social media where people are sending APKs for download as well, right? So we're dealing with a regulation that imposes heavy costs on legitimate users while trying to prevent a legitimate problem. Now, what is the benefit of this particular move? What are the costs of this move? Is something that we intend to discuss today. But I have to ask, should the telecom ministry be even regulating internet services at all? Because the previous telecom minister had said that OTT services, as he called the internet, are out of the purview of the Telecom Act. And now with the TIUE regulation, which is Telecom Identity User Entity regulation, anyone who uses a mobile number as an identifier can be regulated by DOT. So this is the beginning of something where DOT will start regulating internet services because mobile number is the primary identifier when it comes to the internet in India. And so pretty much every Indian internet service is now regulated by the DOT. And we've seen from mobile number validation regulation that they did a public consultation for to the Sanchar Sati imposition and now SIM binding. We're seeing a host of regulations that are covering the internet, most of them without public consultation or paying heed to issues raised in public consultations. So to unpack the SIM binding issue, And to understand whether it really solves the problem or it's even possible, we brought together experts across tech, policy, and industry to help us understand what is SIM binding exactly, and are there different types of SIM binding, whether it's technically sound, whether it is enabled or disabled on devices. If why don't most apps do it in the first place? If it's so good at binding a user to a phone, what risks get created when users get bound to a single SIM for their social media accounts? But we'll begin with a overview of how SIM binding actually works, and then move to questions post that, and we'll open it up for questions as well. So please feel free to use the chat, ask questions, share your experiences, and because this affects all of us, right? We'd like to thank Snap and Meta for the support for this discussion, and our partners, the Internet Freedom Foundation, the Center for Internet and Society, and the Software Freedom Law Center. I'm going to drop a link in chat for you to that you can go to donate to IFF. And please see how you can support CIS and SFLC as well. Civil society organizations in India can do with all the support that you can give to them. So thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over to Kamya to take this forward.
Yeah, just continuing on from where Nikhil left off, I think the first thing to understand is, what is SIM binding? Sort of wanted to come to you, Parag. We
Yeah.
spoke earlier for a story as well. So just wanted to understand what is SIM binding and what is it not? I remember you talking to us about some experiments you'd run with banking apps and as well. So could you talk about those as well and how those went?
See, look, what is SIM binding? SIM binding is basically verifying that the device on which you are using an app actually has the SIM which is linked to that app. Means the app, which is maybe a banking app or a UPI app or any app, must have certain number linked to it, because we use number, right, to link apps. So if that dissociation, if that linkage breaks, then what DOT wanting us to do is to let not the app work. Means if some way that linkage breaks because the SIM has been taken out, the app should not work. That's the intent, right? So that is the first question, that what is the definition of SIM binding, the way, theoretically it has been conceptualized by DOT, right? Now, how it is enabled, that is the next question, means how SIM binding actually practically implemented. See, the practical implementation of SIM binding can be two ways. One is the app reading the SIM directly on the OS. You have got two types of OS. One is what? One is iOS, another is Android. So if the app has an access to read the SIM information directly on the OS, then it can decide whether the SIM is there or not, because the data is right there in the phone itself. Another way to do it is basically to poll a network provider or the bank, poll it and let the bank decide that wherever that OTP has originated, because the app has to originate an OTP. The OTP will have a metadata, which is the telephone number, and the telephone number will have the device information also attached to it. So it will go to the bank, and the bank will say, okay, now I understand that this device has got this telephone number and this device has got this trusted ID. So that binding gets created in the server, not the device, okay? In the bank server or the OTP server. And that binding remains there for the time when the transaction is happening. Now, if the bank somehow is suspicious of the binding getting changed on the device, then it has to reinitiate the OTP. Without that OTP, you cannot verify whether the SIM is there on the phone or not. Now, the problem is that the first case which I mentioned is not allowed by the iOS system. iOS system has prevented it long back. Android used to allow that in the earlier versions. Now they are preventing it. Why they are preventing it? Because it's a privacy issue. There are various kinds of apps which are going to use this information to sell their products, etc. So Apple has completely debarred any app to look into the device hardware and read the SIM. The only way it is possible to do it is through sending an OTP. Now the problem is that how many OTPs you will send, when you will send. Will you send every minute, right? Will you send every day? Will you send every year? What is the event that will get to trigger to enable to send that OTP? That is point number one, which you have to understand that without that OTP being sent, where the metadata of the device as well as the mobile number sent to the bank, there cannot be any binding, and the binding is happening in the bank server. So that is one. The second point is who is going to bear the cost of that OTP? Is the user going to bear, or the app provider, or the bank? Who is going to bear? Because when you are sending the OTP, the user is initiating the OTP. You might have seen that whenever an OTP is sent, the app will tell you that, look, there will be a cost involved. When your OTP is sent, right? Are you willing to bear the cost? So you have to bear the cost. Maybe one time, two times, how many times, right? You will bear the cost of the OTP, because there is no way to dip into the iOS system or the Android system to verify the same. So this is another problem. So it will actually destroy the user experience, as well as it will attach a cost to the user to send the OTP. And there will be many, many people who do not have active connection, or they might have not recharged their packs, and therefore they will get prevented to relog into the system, and therefore they will stop their communication services completely. The third thing which happens, because one is that you initiate that message goes to the bank, and the bank will bind them by a number with the device, right? That is one. The second thing is that is only identifying the device. That is not identifying the user, okay? So then what bank will do? Bank will tell you that, okay, now you put in your password and user ID. And then it also sends an OTP back. Reason it sends an OTP back, because it also ensures that the password is not stolen, the user ID is not stolen, and OTP gives a added level of security. So that once the OTP has been sent, then you can enable a PIN or a Face ID into the device. Because once the SIM binding has happened, there is no need. Then somebody can say, what is the need of a password? What is the need of an OTP? There is no need. But OTP is required because first is device is identified, device is trusted, then the user identity is also ensured. Once the user identity is ensured, then if the device gets stolen, nobody can use it, because unless you have the Face ID enabled or the PIN is enabled, so this adds second level of security. So the problem is that whenever you break this association, the whole process has to be repeated again and again, again and again. So there is a cost involved from the user, there is a cost involved from the bank sending the OTP. So if DOT's order has to be implemented on a continuous basis, then the user bill, mobile bill, is going to shoot up from the current level to maybe disproportionate level, as well as the WhatsApp or anybody who has to keep sending SMSs, their bill is also going to shoot up, and it will become completely financially unviable. It is not only going to destroy the user experience, but it is also going to make it completely financially unviable. I'll stop here because there are many things which we can discuss, but I would like to give.
Yeah. Anand, I just wanted to come to you here. You've studied how fraudsters operate. We've talked to you about this in the past as well. So just wanted to understand your perspective on what you think the idea might be behind enforcing SIM binding for services like WhatsApp, Telegram, Snap, or Josh. What is the problem, according to you, that the government is trying to solve for with this solution?
Okay. Am I audible? You're able to hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Fraudsters are going to be in every place where there are people. Like that was true of trade fairs when I was younger. That was true of public transport as of today, and it is going to be the case. So most of the guys hang around on the place where people are. And nowadays people are on digital spaces, much less on physical spaces. There are 2 or 3 digital spaces that people hang around in general based on your segmentation. One is social media. One is WhatsApp, one is Snapchat, TikTok, I don't know. It's kind of very hard to keep up with all the places people can hang because they are as numerous as town squares. Now, what happens is in India, I've particularly seen that most of the initial contact, as what we call it, before a fraud happens, there is an initial contact. That initial contact comes through internet or phone. There are only 2 or 3 ways in which an initial contact can happen, either through phone or an internet. Now, let us say it came through a phone. There is some kind of a signal that a telco gets. Maybe the guy is calling you, maybe the frequency is whatever it is, etc., etc. But when someone calls you over or talks to you or reaches you over any of these internet applications, they use typically, and this is something that I've come across quite often, the person who sends you the WhatsApp message, the fraudster, when you actually trace it back, you will often find that the person on whose name the number is registered has no idea how WhatsApp is running on that number. So there are two distinct disconnect problems. One is that there is a user identity, which is the SIM identity or the person to whom the SIM is given. And then there is the WhatsApp or the messaging app on which is registered with that name. Because let us say you complain after being defrauded, what is the first thing that a cop does? He will come and say, "Aapko kaisa hua?" Then you say, "This person contacted me over WhatsApp. This is the phone number." So then the guy sends them saying that, okay, what is the registered thing? And then he goes and tries to figure it out. Who's the guy under which the phone number is registered? That guy would have no correlation or connection, and in fact would be completely oblivious to the fact that there is actually a WhatsApp account sitting on top of his phone. That's it. That is the root cause of the problem. And that if you do the root cause of the problem, I would probably say it's very difficult to put a number to it, because these numbers are of what really contributed is not widely published, but you can put 20 to 25, 30% as a ballpark figure. It is simply the way in which people are in India use WhatsApp a lot or Telegram a lot. These two things are wildly popular. Okay. And so when you look at this on the other side, you see this numbers. I don't know what numbers they saw, because I can only speculate 20, 30%, which I think is a reasonable ballpark based on whatever sample size I've seen. They look at it and say, you know what, there is a distinction between the messaging app's identifier, which is the account, and the phone number linked, which is two different problems. So the way in which you think about SIM binding as a construct, why it came from the other side, from the government side or whoever wrote the regulations, is that why can't we just merge them together? And the merge them together is the SIM binding directive. That is how I would explain it. Why?
So, Anand, I'm thinking about WhatsApp, I get, because it's such a large platform, right? And probably the most used platform in this country. But there's also Signal, Aratai, Snapchat, ShareChat, GeoChat, and Josh, which have also been sent these orders. Do you see these names also pop up in the research that
no.
you've done?
No, not in the recent past. I mean,
Aratai is brand new. At least it's
yeah.
old, but it's only started gathering momentum now.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering about whether there was sufficient
I mean,
application in mind, or saying, we're going after one, let's go after a whole bunch of them.
I mean, I think it is a conceptual problem for them. I think they've essentially looked at it and said, oh, these two things are tied, so it has to be tied like this. There are a whole bunch of issues on that kind of a thinking. But all I'm trying to tell is that explain why it could have triggered this, because of this data point that I was aware of.
I want to add to that thing, Nikhil. So you're talking about, it's not just WhatsApp, but you're talking about Aratai and also, which is brand new app. So this is my thought process. So now, if only WhatsApp has been mandated to do this SIM binding and not others, then they will definitely raise a question, right? Why penalizing us and not others? And also, there can be another thought process is, yes, if we are making it difficult for fraudsters to use WhatsApp, then they will move to other messaging apps like Aratai. So it is also now we saw gaining some popularity. So they can also use those mediums. So to do that thing, they might have come up with this blanket mandate for that all these messaging apps can be used for this SIM binding.
But Venkata, does SIM binding actually prevent or reduce frauds in any shape or form? Because the thing is, if there was, what is a loophole here that they're trying to, I understand what Anand said about the fact that they don't have that identifier or that linkage, but people are just buying SIMs by the bagfuls, correct? And so, and they've got mule accounts. So by SIM binding, it'll only just be that they'll be able to identify the mule in that sense. And it's not like if they don't send a requisition to WhatsApp, WhatsApp can't give them the information about what number that account is linked to. So what does this solve for is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, so this is also what I'm trying to figure out. Is it actually solving the problem that they are bringing? That is prevention of frauds, right? So let's come back to what Mr. Parag has told, that there are three problem areas what he has told about when it is coming to a SIM binding, right? So one is these apps will not get the SIM card details. Okay, that's out of question, where they cannot use that thing. Another one is to get the SIM card information. Every time they need to poll and send out a message from the mobile phone to see whether the same SIM card is present or not, which is not viable. So third thing, what I'm trying to now tell is that the SIM binding can be only mandated by TRAI, which is being mandated by TRAI. It can only be made for Indian mobile numbers, right? So if someone is using international numbers, we saw there are a lot of scams which are happening using international numbers, +1 +993 whatever it is.
Yeah.
So what is going to stop the fraudsters from using these international numbers? It is very easy for me today to get this international number. There are certain things called virtual numbers where I can just buy these virtual numbers and then use those things. Or else eSIMs, these days eSIMs are very popular. I can activate the eSIMs and then I can use international eSIMs and use those things and use those virtual numbers to commit the fraud. So that is what it is trying to solve. It is not solving the problem which is being advertised as. It will not be stopping the frauds that are happening. This is not a silver bullet. See, if you told, right, there are a lot of scams which are happening using WhatsApp. People are losing lakhs and crores of rupees. If this SIM binding mandate is actually helping those people stopping that thing, then okay, no problem. We can take a little bit of inconvenience, or we can pay some money to this thing. But I'm not saying that this is helping the cause.
Okay. Kamya?
Yeah, on the comment that Venkata just made, Parag, how does this work for eSIMs, for virtual SIMs?
Look, let me come to eSIM, because whether it is eSIM or whether it is any SIM, it does not matter whether it is physical SIM. See, eSIM is nothing but making sure that the device real estate is properly used. That's all. So they have kind of migrated to a more efficient way of using the hardware, because the real estate of mobile phone has become a big problem. That's the only reason why eSIM, because what is SIM? SIM is nothing but a very small memory on which some information is stored, in simple terms. So that can be stored in the device also. Why you need to put a separate SIM on the device? Only reason you put a separate device is because if you swap phones too quickly, you don't have to go through the hassle of the mobile operator, right? So that is the reason why.
Parag, can't eSIMs be spoofed?
So that's a different
It's just
point.
information, right? Then it can be
Just a
spoofed.
minute. Nikhil, I think I'll digress the conversation in a different direction. But before that, I would like to point out a very, very important issue, so that the discussion becomes more anchored and very focused. And then we can talk about the spoofing part also.
Okay.
See, look, the most important thing, or the fundamental thing, let's understand, can't get access into the OS, therefore you can't read the SIM. Everybody knows that, and there is no disagreement, except for the few old Android version which used to give access. Now nobody gives, because they have protected the layer, the OS layer. Nobody will give. So what is the way to get an access? Only through the network provider. Let's understand this. Who knows their network best? Who knows? WhatsApp is just riding on the network provider. It is just an app which is running on the network provider on the data layer. The network provider knows that which phone has got what SIM. Okay, so that information has to be conveyed to the app so that the app knows that whether the linkage has been broken or not. Today, what you are doing, you are sending an SMS, right? And that SMS is very archaic way of doing it. It is not foolproof. You can do a man-in-the-middle attack. There are many things possible because the whole system that we run today, as far as telecom network is concerned, is not a trusted system. It is an untrustworthy system because it is an archaic system. We have not yet migrated to full trusted system, which I was talking to you, someday. I don't want to get into that, right? In this. So the way to do is to prevent that barrier of sending SIM. You can send a different type of message which will not have that friction, and that can be sent silently. And therefore, there is called a protocol called Camera API Protocol, GSMA Connect. And if you look at the Mobile Congress, in the Mobile Congress which happened in India, all the mobile operators have together announced that they are launching this API to make the banking application more trusted and spam proof. How they do that? They will have a silent agreement with the bank, and then the app is going to send that information or request that information using that API from the network without sending any SMS, and the cost is going to be far lower. It is not going to be free, by the way. That's why the mobile operators want to make money. See, the reason the mobile operators is pushing for the SIM binding is because commercial reason. They also know that it is not practically possible to implement. They want to make money. That's why they are going ahead and saying that we want everybody to send SMS. Everybody should be sending SMS all over the time. The SMS is going to flow. The whole network is going to become SMS carrier only now, right? Because more SMS, more money, both ways. That's why they're pushing it.
And they've also, along with DOT, they're creating this MVN, in which case the SMS rates are also like
Correct.
3 times,
Correct.
almost
Correct.
15 times what
Correct.
the current rates in the market are.
So SMS is actually creating a lot of problems. It is not seamless. It is going to cost the user the money, right? User is going to pay the money. Now, when I'm talking about this GSMA Connect, go and visit and look at the press release which the mobile operators have done, that the app provider pays because they have an agreement with the network provider, because the network is what the mobile operator knows well. It is a physical layer, right? On which everything is running. So you get the information from the mobile operator whether the SIM is bounded or not in case of a risky behavior. Not everybody. See, if this whole 600 million customers in India is continuously going to send SMSs, or the GSM Connect protocol is going to keep on polling that, oh, my SIM has been binded or not, it does not serve any purpose. You have to do it in a very discreet and a risk mitigation way. Identify a group of people who are the miscreants. Don't tell them that you are polling them. You just tell them that you look at, because the network knows that if there is a risky behavior, suddenly the location of the provider has changed. Your location is here, and suddenly after 1,000 miles, you have changed your location. So all these things, who will know? The mobile operator will know, right? So that is the reason why that internationally nobody is doing all this SIM binding, etc. I do not know. This was a completely thoughtless order. I can tell you with bluntly, they have not thought this through. I'm not putting any allegation against anybody. I am saying that if it was thought through, nobody would have issued such a notification. The best way to implement this is using a discrete risk mitigation based, a small universe, and then using GSMA protocol, GSMA, that is the Camera Protocol API, which I was saying, which is already launched. Maybe they have not fully implemented it. They will expand it later. That will limit the fraud to a much larger extent. Now, coming to your question about what was the question?
I've also forgotten, Kamya.
No, you are saying that whether this SIM
eSIMs and
eSIMs
virtual SIMs. But
can be
I think you
spoofed.
would address that.
Can they be spoofed?
See, they look.
Because Apple's now moving to an eSIM only mandate. for its devices?
I think it will be very difficult to spoof a SIM because once a eSIM is created in the device, it is in the trusted zone. Nobody gets access to that area.
Hmm.
If they enable access into that area by enabling the OS layer to probe each and every app can probe, then you are right, it can be spoofed. That is the reason why no access is given, right? Nobody can read anything, into the trusted zone.
Anand, are the banking or UPI apps probing the OS layer? Are they getting SIM data? Or like Parag was saying that they're not?
No. Actually, that is the entire misconstruction about UPI supporting SIM binding. UPI actually supports device binding with send
Yeah.
SMS. And Apple had to invent a whole new API, which they internally call device binding API, in order to support UPI on iOS. In fact, most of the UPI apps will not work if you're not using iOS 17 because they all use the send SMS API. And the apps that you use the send SMS API has to be manually verified and must be given entitlement and certified by NPCI. Only those apps get access to that API, not your and my app.
And that's a device binding API, not a SIM binding API.
That is a device binding API.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
then no one in India is actually doing SIM binding. Then why is it
Nope.
called SIM binding?
I mean, it is like that Alice in Wonderland, right? People have essentially taken a word and has made it to mean it to whatever you want it to mean, while actually ignoring the correct interpretation of it in technology world.
Right.
Yeah, see, yesterday what I done, I took out my SIM card from my phone, which is having UPI app. I inserted another SIM card, and the UPI apps were working perfectly, no problem. So so I was under impression that it was binding my mobile number, but it is actually doing a device binding, as Anand was is telling. It is doing a device binding. It's not mapping to the phone. Only thing is it is sending out a SMS using that API, and it is silently reading the response what it got. So if there's a way where I can spoof that message which is going to which the app is reading, then even I can spoof that thing without the phone knowing that the SIM card is there. And
Yeah.
when I was registering my UPI app, it asked me to disconnect the Wi-Fi because it wanted to connect to the mobile internet. But the thing is, my SIM card, what I'm using to register UPI is a different SIM card, and the internet was on a different provider. But still, it couldn't know that I'm using a different medium for the internet and different medium to send a SMS.
So that you can do UPI over Wi-Fi also, but the SIM was not in the SIM that was supposedly linked to UPI was not in the device.
No, it is there as of now.
So then it can read the fact that the SIM is still there, right?
No, it is what it is telling. It is not getting SIM is there. It is reading the message which was so as Parag said. So UPI app will send an hash value to a particular number, and then they register the device and they send out an acknowledgement back to my mobile phone. And this app is reading that acknowledgement, and then it knows, okay, it got that message, whatever message it is expecting, right? So it got an API connect and it is expecting. That is how it is making an establishment that the SIM is there, the SIM is present. So that's what I'm telling. If I can spoof that message which the app is reading, then even without the SIM, I can do this thing.
Yeah. So just for people who are not really clued in about this specific spoofing problem actually existed on UPI 1.0. In fact, UPI 2.0 went and came about only because of that specific problem. And they finally figured out that the only way to do even device binding correctly with send SMS is to make Apple give them a very specific API only for UPI apps. So iOS 17 had to introduce a very specific new API that was only used and eligible for UPI apps, certified and vetted by NPCI for them to get access to that. It was like that complicated and messy. So if you go back and think about what is even SIM binding, which is the fundamental question that I had always asked, is you got device binding with send SMS, custom send SMS. That is all you ever had, even in India.
That is absolutely correct.
So in that sense, is persistent. So one of the things that say that it should be impossible to use that app without the SIM being present. From what I understand, that's not possible under the current operating system regime, right, Parag? In the
See,
sense
look,
that
what
it says
they-
it should be impossible to use without the SIM being
no,
present.
what they can do is, see, look, anything is possible if you make the user experience go towards north, southwards, right? See what they can do. You take the SIM out, okay, and then they will say, okay, now you're taking the SIM out, you have to re-register.
Hmm.
Okay, now re-register again, sending the SMS and follow the same process back and forth, which Anand was saying, right? So then in that case, look at the way the whole thing is going to fall back. Suppose because of any reason you have disconnected the SIM, or using software you have disabled the SIM, right? And suddenly the app figured out, oh, there was no SIM. There has been some kind of disconnect between. I suspect that the binding has been broken. The device binding has been broken. So again, re-register. The whole thing goes away. Again, put in the password and again do everything, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so one just small
Sorry.
interjection. So Nikhil, if you look at it, most of the phones in India, even the dual SIM phones, have a SIM disable feature. Like India is a dual SIM
Correct.
country,
Correct.
and most people have one for work and one for office. And most people would switch off the phone on the switch off the SIM on the phone, disable SIM kind of a thing. I've seen it people doing often, right? So what is actually an app that does this kind of SIM check does is that, remember, you can't read the SIM, but you can read the carrier data, as they call it. So what the app can do sometimes is that it will read the carrier data and says, oh, last week I found 403 and 404, which is Airtel and Jio dual SIM phone. Now today I'm only finding 403. That is all it will know. So there is some change. It can detect a change by doing constant read phone state, which is what sometimes people do.
But it
And
can't
then
persistently read SIM presence in that sense.
you can't read SIM presence.
Okay.
I mean, read phone state. It is like switched on or switched off. SIM is there. You just disable it.
Okay, I can just disable my SIMs and just use Wi-Fi also.
Yeah. So if every time you do that, like he pointed out, the app essentially does risk detection. Most of the banking apps do not do SIM presence linkage. Most of the banking apps do some kind of risk detection and say that if the risk is beyond a threshold and SIM being switched off and not being there is beyond a threshold, they will ask you to re-trigger the entire thing. So if you go down this path of even device binding with SIM presence detection, your user experience for any app is going to be disastrous. Okay. You can justify that user experience degradation, which some people call friction, in the case of banking, because ultimately the bank is liable if you lose money. They have to do a whole bunch of stuff that I did all these stuff mandated by regulation. Only after that you lost money, so it is not my problem. So they can force you to do that friction wala thingy because they have to pay money for you. You're liable and a whole bunch of regulations around that. But on the contrary, if you go down the path to any messaging app, what exactly is the liability? What exactly is the regulation? I mean, most of them are free stuff. So in effect, what people are going to be worked up about is that you start implementing this on the later part, you would certainly find most of the apps not being usable.
Yeah.
Kamya?
Anand, I want to add that you're talking about 403 and 404, that is MNC. So SIM card has MCC and MNC country code and network code. I don't think apps can get MCC and MNC codes.
Yeah, not sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. So it is a bit of edgy. Apple, I know, is much worse compared to the Android ecosystem.
See, Anand, I actually have tried this myself on the ICICI Bank app. I have disabled the SIM, right, using setting. Still the app is working. Unless
Yeah,
and
it depends on the app.
until disable both, It will keep on working. And I also tried one more thing. I removed one of the SIM, the primary SIM, and then at the time as soon as I remove it, the app will stop working, right? But as soon as I put a different SIM, not the original SIM, it will continue to work. It will not. It will
Correct.
not detect that whether the original SIM
Correct.
it will map to the
Correct,
bank.
because it can't. Because
can't.
it can't. At the most, it can detect,
it only
oh,
gets
that is Airtel to Jio, but not Airtel to Airtel.
it
Yeah.
only gets whether the SIM card is there or not. It doesn't get whether what operator that SIM card belongs to or
Correct.
not.
I
So
mean, even if
only
you do
SIM-
Airtel to Airtel, it might work.
Only SIM present, yes or no, that eSIM, yes or no, that only that thing they can get.
Right.
So, in that sense, what are the alternatives to SIM binding then? And Anand, because you've looked at fraud so much, will this impact fraud in any way?
It
And
won't
how will it
impact.
impact? How will it make it inconvenient for fraudsters or difficult for fraudsters? Like, what are those specific use cases? Because DOT hasn't told us, COI hasn't told us. What are those specific use cases which will get disabled because of SIM binding, assuming it were possible?
Now let's take the hypothetical. Let's assume that all the messaging apps do this precisely as has been mandated by the DOT or COI. I would probably say no difference would make it for the fraudsters, because then they would go back and start using different type of messengers. See, for instance, one of the most common stuff that they had used during COVID time was emails. Okay, email links, and then they would use
SMS
Facebook
has
links.
it started mostly with SMS, right? WhatsApp
Yeah.
came only later.
Yeah, I mean, so the primary factor here is any communication protocol device system can be used by anyone to reach you. That is the whole point of a communication protocol system. So you can disrupt, the network can disrupt by doing some anomaly detection and tagging, that kind of stuff that what Airtel does, which is spam call, scam call, like they put the tagging nowadays, right? That is, and this stuff existed in email where people would come and say, I'm going to scan your links that are coming on SMSs. And corporates basically say this is like a malware link, that kind of a thing, right? And sometimes spam systems in emails is now 3 decades old. They would basically put spam filters and IP filters around it. So the network can detect some portions of it, but, and you know what is the most funniest part? The maximum number of scams actually are investment scams in both volume and duration, where people are simply told, you and me know a whole bunch of friends who are in the PMS business and stuff like that. They would actually create Telegram groups on mutual fund names, individuals' names, and these would be business
So they're
accounts.
already identified. There's no need for SIM binding. Like, SIM binding would not stop them from doing this.
Doing any of this, okay? And they could just create a Google email group and so on and so on. So if you go and look through this entire system,
And on
it would
Telegram, you
not
can
make it
create an account without a mobile number also.
correct.
So
Correct.
how does it stop that?
I mean, so it is a viewpoint which they thought they had looked at one sets of data and said this could help. It is just that if you have to do an adversarial modeling of what it would impact, because remember, you're talking about sentient human beings on the other side responding and reacting to changes. You're not the only one who's playing this multidimensional chess move. There are fraudsters on their side who are also playing multidimensional chess move. And you have to anticipate that if I move this queen and rook to this NF4, what the other guy is going to do,
Correct.
and we can actually change. If you do that step 2 or 3 steps down the line, you would say this is not going to help.
Exactly, Anand. As you told that this may bring some kind of friction from using Indian mobile numbers. They can go and use international numbers, or as you are telling, they can go to other methods which are there, like email and everything.
No, but they can also just smuggle the SIM cards anyway and put them in devices somewhere else in the world and use it. Like, one of the things that I remember, I think Anand mentioned to me, was that they go into the, like even in Jamtara and all, they would go into an open area where there's still network but no population around. And even if geolocation was possible, they would still use it from there. And how does that help?
Or else
mean,
they can go to densely populated area and use it. It is very difficult for anyone to identify if there are hundreds of thousands of people in a densely populated location. So yes, what like Parag is telling, it's a nonsensical mandate which is not making any sense of whether it will be preventing frauds or not. It can only move to a different medium, or they can start using international numbers to commit this thing. So first thing I need to see, so if they are how are they getting the numbers, right? So you see the modus operandi is they are targeting senior citizens and they are attacking them. Yesterday was my birthday, and I got more than dozens of calls from charitable organizations and asking me and guilting me to donate to them. So they have exactly my birthday and my details. So first target them and see how they are going to. Yes, DPDP is there, but it will take another 1 year to come into existence. The rules are notified, but how will you make sure that your numbers or your personal data, like your age, your bank account details, how much you have?
That genie is now out of the bottle, right? I remember like back in even 10, 15 years ago, there were government departments publishing people's name, mobile number, Aadhaar number, mother's name, father's name, permanent address, residential address, date of birth. Everything was being published in spreadsheets and on government websites, like proper code pages they were there with all this data.
Now,
So obviously, like this, recently someone started a website where you could locate people and know all of their details on a map. That site has now been shut down or has been blocked in India. But that data is obviously all out there.
Yeah, one
So
minister.
that genie can't be put back into the bottle. That's very clear. That from a data and information perspective, we are gone. And the more things we link.
So whatever
to
is out
these,
there, okay, but the new things, we need to make sure that the new things don't go out now.
Venkata, I had a follow-up, but this is not SIM binding related. Rather, like I'm sort of concerned about privacy implications, and just a hypothetical. Let's say a bad actor like steals my phone, takes my SIM card out, and puts it on a new device. Will they then get access to all my app-based communication service accounts? Like, will they now be able to access my WhatsApp account? Are there any other vulnerabilities like this with the whole SIM binding directive as well?
See, even today, WhatsApp, how do you log into your WhatsApp? You log into your WhatsApp using the OTP that is being sent out by them, right? So if I have access to your SIM card, I get your SIM card, I put it in a phone, I can simply log into your WhatsApp because it only takes your OTP for me to log into your account. So so this even we saw, right, there are SIM spoofing incidents also where people have lost money because the new SIM cards have been issued to fraudsters where they got it using fake documents, and they got the OTPs to the bank accounts. They logged into the OTPs, and to stop this thing, what as mandated is any new so for the SIM spoofing, any new SIM card which is being given, the SMS will not be received by that number for 24 hours. So that if you know your SIM card is not working, then you can go and complain it. But if the SIM card has been stolen and you're not aware that your SIM card is stolen and you're not complained, then yes, it can be used to log into your WhatsApp, and it can be used to impersonate you and do whatever harm that can be done.
Got it. Anand, coming to you, one of the things I'm thinking about with the conversation we've been having so far is there's been a lot of comparisons with the banking services with UPI. I'm just wondering, why should messaging services be, regulated like UPI? Is there a need for that to even happen, for this comparison to sort of exist?
Okay. See, let's go back and think carefully about this TIU or TUIE regulations themselves and ask a very simple question. does communication require a phone number? Okay. So if you think and ask the same question, communication never required a phone number even in the email era. Like you could just basically email anyone. I mean, communication actually does not require a phone number. And that internet being a messaging, like the voice transfer and all that, even going back to Skype, never required a phone number. You could do Skype to Skype, which is computer free for, I don't know, 30, 40 years now. So, and hence, if you look back and think, even why do modern messaging services need a phone number? Like there is this service called Threema, which does not require a phone number. Like you would just pay $100 or $200 and then start using it without a phone number. And then you go back and ask a simple
Signal account
question.
without a phone number also.
Huh?
You can create a Signal account without a phone number as well.
Yeah, no, but you need to do it, and they do it only for spam detection, just as like a minor barrier, nothing more than that, really.
Okay.
Right. So if you really look at it, why do modern communication messengers require a phone number? Primarily because of two reasons. One is discovery, which is I want to see my friend, and my friend is on my contact address book. So your contact address book is like your social media thing.
Correct.
But so you need that. The second reason why you need that is, I want to create a barrier so that as a spam. So Signal is open source. 99.9% of the Signal is open source, except the part where they use a phone number to first verify an account initial day. Okay, that part is not open source. That is carefully kept hidden, because if that part is open, then it just basically makes Signal much more harder, easier for scammers to use. And they don't want that. I mean, it is like a minor barrier thingy. And then you can go back and say, please do not allow people to search by my phone number, which is like my username kind of a thing. Which means even discovery is no longer an option for Signal. Like you could ban discovery in Signal. So if you really push hard messengers, they would go towards username model.
And
No
then you have
photos.
even more problems. I'm just going to go to Parag, Anand, because Parag has to leave. Parag, can you tell us how telecom operators sort of what is it that they can do? What are you mentioned the GSMA protocol, the GSMA Connect protocol, but what else can they do to prevent SIM misuse? What are the capabilities that they have? You mentioned that the telecom operator networks haven't been upgraded in that sense for many years. What is it that they can do? Because they seem to be passing the buck onto the app providers and trying to do the SIM binding, which will inconvenience users. Are there things that the telcos can do?
Actually, telcos can do everything. Because they are the physical layer,
Okay.
Nikhil. See, when you are in the physical layer, let's say a mobile phone suddenly appears 10,000 kilometers away. Because if you know that the system actually is so unsecure, this whole SS7 system is so unsecure. If you buy somehow hook and crook, bribe a mobile operator of some country, XYZ country, with a very porous legal system and get an access to an SS7 node, you can access the SMS of an individual without the individual knowing that you actually have access to his SMS. Your phone is live, but your SMS is going to come to that device. You understand? So that kind of capability, you see, the whole system is actually created in such a way that it is trusted. Means if you are talking to a mobile operator, let's say Bharti Airtel is here, and if it is talking to an XYZ mobile operator in some country, XYZ country, then the whole system talking to each other feels as if that they are talking to trusted, entities. So if today in erstwhile year, 20 years back, 50 years back, it used to work because there would be very few mobile operators. Now there are many mobile operators working in countries with very porous legal system. So you go to the mobile operator, pay him some $10,000, get access to the device, to that terminal called SS7 terminal, and you can simulate as if that you are actually a mobile operator. Okay, you can poll the location.
So that's a risk that exists, but what can they do to prevent?
I'm telling, I'm just giving an example. Now, how to prevent it is basically to implement those features to detect that suddenly that user actually has moved from Delhi to Uganda. or some other country. How can it possible,
Well,
right?
Cambodia and Myanmar, I believe, is where
I'm
this is
saying, I'm just
happening
giving an
now.
example. I'm saying
Yeah.
that the mobile operator at the physical layer has loads of information. It doesn't have to go through the GPS. He knows the BTS ID from where the mobile actually has originated. Suddenly, if the location gets changed, he can immediately tell. Now, because this information that mobile operator has, therefore, this information is being put at a central location and being served to high-risk groups like banks and others to create their system more secure. Similarly, if you look at 5G, 5G actually has got a system called network level slicing, the UE level slicing. What the 5G does is it gives an app a specific path, a logical path, which
Well,
does not go through the internet. It
that
goes
becomes a net neutrality concern.
no, just forget it. Just forget about the net neutrality part. We can talk about, otherwise you'll get confused. I'm just giving, when you ask me this question, what the mobile operator can do, I'm telling you. The
Okay.
mobile operator can create a virtual path which is not going through the internet, through the intranet, and the bank server is directly connected to the mobile operator system. So it goes directly to the bank server. It does not go to anybody else. Nowhere it goes, right? Internet, it does not go. So there is no security risk. So therefore, since the mobile operator has a lot of capabilities, they are the people who should be controlling it, not that by passing the buck to app provider. App providers are just riding on the mobile operators. If they happen to use the mobile numbers.
So
You
what
understand?
data can they, apart from the location data or the shift in location data, is there any other data that they can provide
Everything,
to the
everything.
banks? Like what?
Like, for
can they give them?
example,
What do they know?
for example, this whole point about SIM binding, right? The OS level data you are not getting. So what you can do is that if you are, let's say DOT or a bank wants to understand that this particular user is a high-risk user, it can silently, tell the app to pull the mobile operator server and get the SIM binding information without even the user knowing that it's happening in the background. You got my point, what I'm saying? The app, so let me explain. The app can create a secure data because it has got connectivity to data. It has got an IP address. It can create a secure data connection. And then the mobile operator knows that the device has got a certain identity, the mobile number, the IP address it knows because it has got a data connection from the mobile number. When the mobile has how the mobile is enabling a data connection. It is through an IP address. It has got an IP address. Without IP address, you cannot enable a data session.
Correct.
So you have an IP address, you have got the mobile number, both are there. Using this information, you can actually do SIM binding using GSMA Connect, but that will not happen.
Parag, sorry to interrupt. So here you're thinking that there is only one SIM card and the user is not using the Wi-Fi. But in case user is connected to the internet using a second SIM card or he's using Wi-Fi, then the polling will not work because they will not get the information, right?
That's a fair point. That's a fair point, Parag.
No, I do understand that. I am just saying that it is not foolproof. For example, somebody asked me a question. If you are a VPN connection, then what will happen? Then you will not get the IP address, right? You can spoof your. So it is not foolproof. Ultimately, maybe 90% it will work. 10%
So there needs to be risk
still
assessment,
work with
like
SMS.
Anand was saying, based
Still
on
work with
multiple
SMS.
data points.
Yeah, it will still work with SMS. So SMS is the last resort, right? But 90% of the user, you can do silent verification. You understand what I'm saying? You don't have to create.
So just to clarify, I want to understand, like, because let's say a bank has to do risk assessment or UPI has to do risk assessment. What is the data that a telecom operator can provide to a bank or a UPI app live when someone's trying to log in?
Just device binding, automatic, just like what they are doing through SMS.
So and anything apart from device binding?
It can give the SIM swap. What has happened? If suppose there has been a SIM swap in the device, right? 24 hours, that information the bank won't know. That information only the operator knows, right? If let's say Airtel operator has changed SIM, right? In the same device, because he knows the device, he knows the SIM. So that information can be. Similarly, there can be many information which the network layer knows. The app does not know. How can app?
So what else does the network layer know?
No, but
everything,
but I
Nikhil.
got a question here.
One second, Venkat. Parag has to leave some. What else does the network layer know?
See, network layer knows the user device identity, his telephone number, his device ID, and its IP address. It's maybe his location also. It attached to a cell site. The cell ID also. That's
Correct.
how police actually detects, which.
Correct.
So all this location information, the phone number, the type of device, and the IP address of the device, the phone number of the device, everything the network operator knows. What else you need to know other than this?
Okay.
Yeah.
First Venkata, then Anand, in case you have any questions for Parag.
See, Parag, the whole point you're talking about, the network provider knows all these things, but what is the identifier this app will send to the network provider to get this information? So we'll talk about the mobile number. But if the SIM binding is not there, if the user change the SIM card and or the number, then it will be a different, right? The information will not be correct for the thing.
No. I'm not getting my point, Venkat. What I was trying to say is that look at the normal situation, what happens, right? Which Anand was also saying. You initiate an SMS, right? The app actually either does an SMS by itself or triggers the user to send an SMS. That SMS goes to the bank. The
Correct.
bank can then send a response, and there's a device binding. It's not a SIM binding, right? Same device binding happens without getting into the hassle of sending an SMS. That is what I'm trying to say. The same thing, which is currently being sent through the SMS, because when you send an SMS, that SMS is carrying the mobile number information, right? And then it goes. Now, since the GSMA has created an API called Camera API. There is API 1, API 2. The API 2 has become more. I have not studied the API in detail, therefore I will not be able to give you the physical layer part. But what I am trying to tell you is that the same thing which is done through SMS can be done in a seamless manner without the user coming to know that this is happening in the background.
Yeah, so for the Tamara API, what is the application sending to the Tamara API to get the information? Because it doesn't, if it doesn't verify the mobile number.
That I don't know. Let me tell you that I don't know. What I know is that there has been a clear press release, and I've studied a little bit on the network, on the GSMA protocol. Some countries have implemented to do login. See, what happens is that when you are trying to log in into the device, you actually have to go through a lot of problems. Like you have to type in your password and it becomes a big hassle. So you can do seamless logging, right? In the device using this protocol, because the device knows the IP address, device knows the mobile number. How it does, I do not know, because I haven't studied it. Okay, so I will not be trying to. So maybe there is a way. I will study it later, and I have not studied it yet, so I'll not be able to tell you.
Yeah, so that is the only question what I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah, because if the mobile OS are not giving identifiers to identify the SIM card.
No, it is not that. Sorry to interrupt again. It is not the mobile OS. It is actually the physical layer, the GSMA protocol, which is actually running at the physical layer. So it is the GSMA which is extracting the information, not the mobile OS. That is the difference between what when I said that the OS is not giving the information. The GSMA, which is the physical layer protocol where the signaling is running, that protocol knows what is the mobile number and the IP address.
Okay, so I got many queries, doubts on this thing, but
I do not know that.
We'll have to keep that offline. Anand, any comments?
Yeah, see, there are other interesting information that the operator knows about, which is actually what we call risk indicators. So remember the risk indicator problem. It is a composite risk indicator that could be constructed out of many pieces of data, and almost all the pieces of data is actually with the telco operator. For instance, one of the most common risk indicator in banking applications is what is the age of the number? How far has it been KYC modified? When was it reviewed or put it on the revocation list? And it is just like you go down this path and you figure out what is the most common area. Like earlier there used to be the circles, telecom circles. Now it is not that much. So you could get a whole bunch of this information.
No, circles still exist, but we have portability across
portability
circles.
and all that kind of stuff, right? So you could get a whole bunch of this information and then create a composite risk index and say, is this a problem guy or is this not a problem guy? And many of the banking applications uses some versions of the composite risk index, including some UPI, pure UPI apps. But it is perfectly possible for you to create a composite risk index without getting involved into SIM binding for a cybercrime thing. This is something that we had always thought about.
But that has to be done on the telco side then, right? Or that
Haan,
information
correct.
has to be
And you can just
So-
take that information and feed it up to any
So-
app that wants it.
So basically, they're trying to not invest in these things so that other platforms have to.
I
Not
mean,
invest. It's
continue
not
to
about
use
it. Sorry to interrupt. It is not about invest. It is actually ensuring that they earn more money through SMS. That is what my apprehension is.
Well, that, like I said, they're already getting like 10, 15 times the money through the MVN, and now they're trying to move more action to SMS, I guess, then. Fair enough. But thank you so much for joining us, Parag. And I know you have to leave, so I won't hold
No
you
problem.
any longer. But
No problem.
if you get time later on in the discussion, please do come
I
back.
can actually be there for another 5 minutes, then I'll.
Okay, great. Kamya?
Just on the indicators aspect that Anand mentioned, there is a whole other directive that the government also issued, right, which was about the financial fraud risk indicator data, and that has to be integrated into the app-based communication services. And I was just curious, given that there are these two approaches that are being sort of put together for fraud prevention, what considerations should guide how they are implemented and how the requirements for the two are balanced? If FRI exists, do we need SIM binding? That sort of thing is what I'm trying to get to.
If you have a risk indicator, again, remember, people use CIBIL score as a risk indicator for giving you a loan. It does not mean that you will not default. Yeah. So the nature of any risk indicator is that it is probabilistic and it has failure zones and failure rates. And sometimes the same failure zone and failure rate is not applicable if the circumstances and situations change. So the right way to do cybercrime prevention using telecom data, hence, is always probabilistic risk indicators, which you'll have to keep evolving over a period of time based on how circumstances evolve and situations evolve and your adversaries evolve, than go into hard-nosed, simple indicators. I think that is the larger picture. That is an alternative for SIM binding. So since you specifically asked me, what is the alternative? See, you got to give it to them to say that there is a problem. And the problem is this, but how do you solve the problem is only via risk management, risk indicators, probabilistic variance zones and compliance zones and so on, and not harp and run towards extremely useful, at least in their heads, of one or two simple rules. It just doesn't work like that, at least not fraud.
Understood. One of the questions that is being asked, Venkat, I was hoping you could take it. It's on the Q&A section. Somebody's asking what happens to their WhatsApp account if they're trying to run it on Wi-Fi tablets or iPads. Will they be able to use these apps? Similarly, I mean, I understand probably you can't, but on the other side, there are certain times when, let's say, your SIM network is fluctuating, roaming breaks, or SIM becomes inactive for one reason or the other. So what happens in these situations, and how should these situations sort of be considered with implementing such a directive?
Yeah, see, the directive says that it's not barring anyone to not using WhatsApp on desktop or iPads or on devices where there's no SIM. They can use on those devices by scanning the QR code, and they can log into this thing.
No, actually, Venkat, I think the desktop apps will not be allowed, but web will be allowed. That's what the ruling says. That's what the directive says.
Achha.
Because apps require SIM present, but web version will still be allowed.
Okay. So, okay, let's talk about web version then. Okay, web version, I can log in through the web, but the mandate says that it should be logged off every 6 hours. After every 6 hours, the app should be logged off on the web, and every time one has to scan the QR code and log into that thing. So this is one thing. And second thing, what you're talking about is network patches, right? So if there's a network is not good, then anything. So let's assume that the SIM binding is done, and they are silently checking the network to see if the SIM card is present or not. So we have let's assume that they have come up with some solution. So if there's no network, then there are two things which can happen. Is then one, as Parag said, they can immediately break the session and they can log you out, or they can be some kind of session timeout. So it can be some realistically speaking 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something. After that, if they figure out that you are not in network, then they will log you off. So now if we see, let's take this thing roaming. So when you are roaming outside your country, so mostly people are not enabling international roaming when they are going, and they are getting local SIM cards or the eSIMs for them. So if the app knows that the network is not there, then it is logging off your phone. Then you will not be able to log in again because you don't have access to your phone, your number, because you're not enabled roaming, and you will not get OTP to log in again. So you're basically locked out of your WhatsApp account or Messengers account when you're in roaming, and you're not enabled roaming, and you're not able to get the OTP. So these are some of the issues which we may encounter when these things are happening.
Understood. Anand, following up with you on this, because we talked about the 6-hour logout period, just wanted to understand, based on your experience with looking at fraud, are there any technical justifications for having this sort of 6-hour period as the threshold for keeping an account active?
I mean, I don't know. See, I'm not able to grok it in my head, a variety of things as to why it was what it is.
And then we can't see you.
Yeah, because there's no light here in the house.
Okay.
It just went off.
So,
Yeah.
like, what kind, in that, just to explain Kamya's question, what kind of frauds are being done using WhatsApp web or Telegram web, or, are there frauds being done using these mechanisms?
I don't know. See, that part of data is probably only visible to really people who are investigating, and not really people. See, you always know that a particular medium is being used, which is WhatsApp or Telegram or ABC. But is it the web version? Is it the app version? Is it the desktop version? I don't know. I don't think I have access to that kind of data.
Yeah, but one can use initiate video call using web, and then they couldn't do the thing. No one is stopping them to use that thing.
They can do it using handsets also. So just from a privacy perspective, Anand and then Venkata, like, does a continuous SIM device binding create new metadata streams that could expand sort of surveillance of people? Like COI says it does not, but how is that possible given that now app-based communication services will have to do periodic SIM checks or continuous SIM checks? So is there like fresh metadata that's getting created?
Yeah, there is definitely new metadata. So think about the actual problem that folks who are doing investigations come across. Let's go back and think about it from the other side. Okay, you made a complaint, and someone defrauded you using WhatsApp, and then there is a number. You go look at the number, and you go figure out that the last time someone used that number for connecting a WhatsApp account on SMS in that number is 18 months ago, 24 months ago, 36 months ago, no one knows. Yeah. So if you are trying to investigate it, the investigation side has to look at it and say, what is the data? Where do I go look for? Right? I mean, the data probably doesn't even exist, because all I get is a piece of data in one side, a piece of data another. What is the connection? I mean, the connection is time. And so the idea behind this kind of stuff is, can you bring the time closer together so that it's kind of obvious that we can go back and look at what happened? Yeah.
Hmm.
So, so you think about this. Let us say, I'm just giving again a hypothetical, like just a very hypothetical example. Let us say you go back and implement a messaging app today by saying, no matter what, every 1 month, in spite of the terrible user experience, you're going to do the SIM bundling again.
Hmm.
Okay. So suddenly you're generating send SMS and whatever telecom API calls every month. So that is data.
Hmm.
Right. And then you now shift it to saying that, okay, I will do it every day. You generate more data.
Hmm.
Right. Now, let us say that I'm investigating a fraud and I'm going and look at it and saying, okay, Nikhil got defrauded by this WhatsApp number 123. And what is the WhatsApp number 123? Where is the data? Where was it generated? So you just see a near-term data. So the storage requirement of looking for data to connect two pieces of information, because they are closer in time, you as an investigator has some visibility into it. That's it.
And
but
just
that-
on the sorry,
Yeah.
Venkat.
Yeah, so that brings here another question in the privacy, right? So yes, it can be used to prevent frauds, but if that metadata is being out and it is in hackers or fraudsters' hands, then that will give you your location where you are in almost in real time where you are going, and it can be used for surveillance and all.
But that data is already available with the telcos, right? They know where you're going. They do cell tower triangulation. We've seen them use in investigations. So this doesn't change that situation.
Okay.
I mean, it's already there. It's a part of the centralized monitoring system. So I'm just going to go through some of the questions that we've have in the Q&A. And if anyone else has any questions, let us know. Someone's asking, can we know more about how risk identifiers can be used as an alternative for SIM binding for messaging apps like WhatsApp? So what are the risk identifiers that can help?
Okay. See, I'll tell you the most interesting risk identifier that I've come across in my field. I'm not claiming that it is anywhere close to great or fantastic, because that is the nature of the risk identifier. Prepaid numbers are more riskier than postpaid. Everyone who works in the loan industry understands that. And the number two is age of the number. When I say age of
You
the
mentioned
number,
that, yeah.
it is the more age a number is, the less risky it is. Okay. Number three is what we call as location jumping. Okay. Human beings have very predictable patterns. And more predictable you are, the less riskier you are. So, and then number four is the example about, I would say, the kind of applications they use or the web URLs that you use.
So I mean, payments apps have been criticizing for reading the apps on your device,
correct,
right?
Correct.
And isn't the OS restricting that access now?
Nowadays, it is restricting.
Correct.
Okay.
So then they don't have that. We can't get that data necessarily, right?
The telcos have it.
The telcos know which apps are on your device.
No. The telcos know which URLs that you are doing through DNS.
Correct.
That is the reason why.
I've actually seen that in the telcos knock that, for example, like I saw full charts where they said, okay, this is the amount of usage of YouTube at 8 o'clock in
Correct.
the evening, to indicate that, okay, that's when people listen to prayers or Gurbani in the morning and stuff. So
Correct.
they know what your
So for instance,
correct.
and again, the most interesting.
How is that a risk identifier though?
No. All I'm trying to tell you is deviation from the norm and the pattern. Okay.
Okay.
You could essentially do some deviation and normal analysis and then derive a lot of risk indicators around it. Okay.
Understood.
You don't need SIM binding for it.
Yeah, people who use VPNs could be seen as risky people.
That is true, but
I'm
all
just
I'm trying to
kidding.
tell-
I'm kidding.
all I'm trying to tell you is that, I mean, you can do, but these are all very probabilistic. Some signals are much more stronger. And I
Okay.
can also tell you some other signals, whether I should say it, I don't know. Like in some places, more online presence that you have, which is, have you linked your phone number to Zomato? Have you linked your phone number to Swiggy? Is considered to be a less risky signal compared to a guy like me who doesn't have any online presence.
Understood. But then they don't have that data whether you've linked it to them, right? Because those are private companies. How do they have that data? Banks can't have that data. Telcos can't have that data.
I mean, all I can say is the data exists. I will just leave it there.
So we don't have a data protection law that prevents government from accessing that data.
Not just the government. I mean, all I can say is that the data exists.
The data exists. Okay. This is certainly this conversation's taken a dark turn now.
Yeah, this is now very concerning for me that this kind of data is existing where I'm registering Zomato or Swiggy or whatever it is. So this, I think.
See, it is not a very hard problem, Venkata, if you really think about it on a first principle basis. And I'll tell you just on a first principle basis. What is the first thing that most people do when they move a SIM phone, when they move a phone? They type their phone number and try to reinstall the app on a new phone. Let's say you switch from Android to Google or Android to iOS or whatever. Immediately it will send that, please type the OTP. Okay, it's the most simplest way of getting it, right? So the very fact that you can type a phone number on any of this existing app and it sent you an OTP, even though you may not know the OTP, means that phone is registered with a particular service. It's actually pretty dead simple.
It's correlating to that thing where the OTP is coming and they are trying to correlate that, okay, this he's getting.
Yeah, so you don't even need to go and do certain things in the market. And in fact, as early as 2020, many banks used to do phone number OTP based login. Even some banks do. And what the fraudsters would do is basically they would procure a bunch of phone numbers, yeah, and then give it to some 25, 30 people and ask them to type the phone numbers in those web apps and then figure out, oh, you got this bank. If the bank sent an OTP, then they say, oh, you have this phone number. Then they would call you and say, sir, मैं इस बैंक से बोल रहा हूँ, आपका KYC का problem है. You would believe in it because you would have an account on the bank. So in general, if you look at, in general, like one of the points I always told Nikhil on the fraud stack presentation was, OTPs are generally a problem, but India is an OTP country.
Yeah, everywhere we are using OTP for even Uber and all. So we are used to giving OTPs everywhere. I think RBI has come up with the mandate that we should be moving out with OTPs and we need to work on TOTPs, right? So app-based OTPs.
So all I'm trying to tell is that if you're really looking for risk indicators which are outside of SIM binding, there are plenty of it. And with the additional caveat, they're all probabilistic with their own evolving characteristics. You have to do a lot of data science in order to get them right.
I think
We're a little low on time, so I'm going to ask Kamya to take over and maybe run through the remaining questions on the Q&A. Kamya?
Yeah, I'll just do this very quickly. And either of you can take this. Somebody's asking what would amount to an active SIM if I'm traveling abroad and do not have an international roaming activated, but the SIM is active in India. Will it set to be an active SIM? I'm not sure whether you guys have answers for this, but
yeah, see, I told this before, right? Active SIM is the SIM card is running or not. The app's messengers cannot check whether the SIM card is active or not. It checks whether the SIM card is present in that phone or not. So what we are telling is it can be sending out SMS and to look into that. But if the roaming is not active, then the application cannot send out SMS out to verify that the SIM card that the number is active or not. So the messaging apps can immediately log you off because the SIM is not present on that thing.
So there is the two questions that I have pending about the entire, like the WhatsApp for business and on the entire business side of things. So WhatsApp and Telegram currently use like cloud synced architectures. Would continuous SIM polling how will continuous SIM polling be integrated with those without structural rewrites? And secondly, what happens to the entire business stack that uses that uses APIs for CRMs and would this regulation break the session integrity by design? Venkata?
I think see what SIM binding is trying to figure out is it is trying to figure out the number which is being used to log in is present there or not. Now what business applications can use on multiple devices, right? That is what one of the use cases is. So it can be only used on one single device. It cannot be used on multiple
No, on
devices.
a single device that has a SIM card then, right? Or if it's a web-based client, then they'll get logged out every 6 hours.
Yeah, so in a single device, if it is using a business system, then it will not be. I don't see there's any issue. Only thing is, see, they are only polling at regular intervals to see whether the SIM card is there or not.
Yeah.
It will not affect if it is being used on a single device on the web, business.
Yeah, but most of this doesn't run on a device, right? It runs on a client server, so to speak.
Yeah, in that case, then there will be an issue. If the business applications are being used on the phone where there's a SIM card, then it is there. But if it is on the machines which are there, then I see there will be some kind of issue we can see then.
Okay, Kamya?
Yeah, I think two questions here were just about WhatsApp for Business, so those have been addressed. Somebody's asking, can we know more about how SIM binding will impact digital payments, fintech onboarding? I think that's been answered. Yeah, can you elaborate further on subscription manager and phone state permission? How will it be utilized for SIM binding, or are they not useful at all? Or can it only be binded using sending a verification message?
There is read phone state. I think that is very Android specific stuff. You can get some portions of it, but not a lot of it. And because you only get some portions of it, that is the reason why people use that not send OTP, like receive OTP, type the OTP kind of a thing. This entire stuff came because of 2019 regulations of Android, which was the thing in India, which kind of barred quite a lot of these APIs. So what you get is what you get. Not a lot.
I think that's largely it. I think the other questions that I mentioned here have been answered.
Great. There's one that's specific. So Vishwas says that Apple did not build a specific API for UPI on iOS 17 in collaboration with NPCI. Instead, NPCI mandated that all UPI payments apps must require iOS 17 or higher to function, leveraging a new security or anti-fraud feature that Apple introduced in that OS version.
Yeah, that version itself, that API itself said if you want entitlement for that, it should only be UPI. The API itself said UPI. I had put it on some Twitter feed somewhere. I'll find it.
Understood. So there's one question about the cost to users because of SIM binding. Will the number of OTPs rise? What's the likely cost?
I think it is less about the OTP because even if you look at the traditional send SMS feature, the send SMS feature, for you to implement it, you have to go and provision an mobile virtual number for you to send SMS to. From memory, I think UPI mandates at least 10 MVN numbers to be created and provisioned for every PSP. This is from memory. So, and then they do OTP, but not at the frequency. So any which way, you can always come back and say, I think it's less about cost to the users. It is more about a terrible device experience given our mostly prepaid population and how you basically play it out.
So is this entire the other notification that fraudulent numbers that have been identified by the government, they are sent to app-based messaging services, and they're required to block them on the platform. I'm just curious about, would that work, Anand? And what have you seen with number recycling and the impact of, like, how frequently do these scammers run through numbers?
See,
typically.
they buy a lot of phone numbers. And if you remember the old presentation
That
I
means
gave,
that the whole telco KYC is not working. They've got this Astra thing which does facial recognition for every person when they sign
yeah,
up.
but Astra only works if I'm spoofing your phone, your face on 25, 30 phone application, right? It doesn't work when I'm renting it out from you.
Oh, okay. So they're renting out the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, see, the fraud economy works largely with a mix of characteristics. One is that I can rent your identity, I can forge your identity, I can steal your identity, I can rent your phone number, I can rent your bank account. I mean, like you have to basically think of it like a spectrum of problems. And some portions of the problems can be resolved by scanning every CAF form and seeing if the same guy's phone is face is on 20 or 30 of them in a district. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what if you are a mobile guy who would just go from place to place and keep within the 8 limit or the 7 limit and then sell the SIM card to one of these mule guys? So KYC as a problem exists in India because people do rent out their identities apart from being forged.
Interesting. I don't think we've taken rental into account. Professor Mehrotra is asking, why should most apps be allowed to access data such as location, address book, etc., than required? Shouldn't there be restrictions on that data access for apps? And so, in that sense, my follow-up question would be that what do apps use all this data that we have access for? We have a problem with giving too much of data from our devices to everyone, but why do the apps need this data?
I don't know. Most would say it is user experience. Most would
So
do shady
I
stuff.
can give one example of what happened in terms of like one problem that we've identified in the course of this conversation is that apps have access to which apps are installed on your device. And once upon a time, Paytm used that, saying that if you have TeamViewer installed on your phone, then Paytm app will not function until you uninstall it. And that was happening because Paytm was because TeamViewer was used by people to take over Paytm accounts and take money out of the wallet. So sometimes, Professor Mehrotra, you have a situation where apps actually need access to this information for their own risk assessment and fraud prevention, and that's why Paytm had used it. The SIM binding also some of that like OTPs for all of that came in as a function of the frauds that we've seen over a period of time. And so one part is also to give legitimate apps the access to data so they can do their own fraud prevention.
Yeah, but Nikhil, if you look into the privacy issue, I don't want Paytm or any other bank applications to know what kind of apps what I'm using. Okay, so if I'm using some say,
correct, I don't disagree with you there, but I'm saying this is one like very prominent use case that was being used to hijack and funnel money out and take money out of accounts.
Yeah, UPI apps are asking for your phone state and your location to see whether you're in India or you're in the location where you're registering for. So to not in some remote location where yes, there are pros and cons, but privacy takes a beating when we are giving all this information to all the people who are asking. But you see, most of the applications, I think Sanchar Sathi, someone's there, it is also wants access to your phone. Sorry, light on your mobile phone. So they made a meme that camera flash on your mobile phone. Okay, so people are flooded with memes. So I think sometimes these guys take all the kinds of necessary details or permissions in case maybe we may use it tomorrow, or let's ask it beforehand without even knowing they're using it for legitimate purposes or not.
Yeah, I guess it's about risk assessment. But Venkata, thank you for joining us for this discussion. And Anand, amazing. And as always, I think we need to figure out if we can perhaps do a Fraudstack 2.0 talk with you, because things would have changed in the last three years. But uh, but thank you for joining us, and thank you to Parag also for giving us that information about from the telecom operator and how they function perspective, because Parag has spent decades in the telecom ecosystem. He's no longer in the telecom ecosystem, but he knows more than most people about
Yeah, I found
how
the
a networks
camera
function.
APIs and stuff like that pretty useful. I knew they had quite a lot, but not to this extent.
I'm happy to connect you guys. I'm going to hand over to Kamya now. Kamya,
Okay, pleasure. Nikhil, thanks.
thanks.
Yeah, thanks. We'll translate into the second panel, which is mostly focused on the implications of the SIM binding directive on users and businesses. Nikhil fairly introduced some of the worries we have in the beginning, but yeah, I just want to move to introducing the panelists. We have Nikhil Narendran, who's joining us, Rohini Lakshmi. Yeah, can both of you hear me? And Prashant Suganthan
Yes.
from FLC.
Yes. Hi, everyone.
Rohini, I don't think I can see you.
I am not on a connection good enough for a video call, so I'm only on voice.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, I'm traveling, and this was the best I could do.
Okay, no worries. Let's get started on one of the questions that I saw in the previous panel, but I think this one is better placed to address it. So one of the things that we sort of need to understand is the underlying, rules that is sort of leading to this directive. So, Nikhil, I wanted to come to you. What is a telecom identifier user entity? What can fall within its scope? And, because of that, what does this mean for OTT regulation under the Department of Telecommunications?
Sure. So look, I think so. Whatever I'm going to say here is an interpretation that I have, and also trying to sort of make sense of a regulation, which is already in front of us, right? So essentially, look, if an entity is using a telecom identifier, the classic example is being a mobile number for the identification of the customer or for delivery or provisioning of a service, then that's the TIUE that's defined under the regulation. So essentially, we are looking at, I'll give you an example. Let's take the example of WhatsApp or Signal for that matter. How is WhatsApp or Signal delivering the communication to you? How is the user identified on that platform? It's using that number. So when Kamya is messaging Nikhil, Kamya's number is showing against Kamya. Nikhil's number is showing against Nikhil. And WhatsApp, to some extent, is relying on these numbers as the identifier. And the users on the platform can search using these numbers and message each other using these numbers. So that's the frame within which this regulation is issued by the government, right? So now the rules per se only talk about the TIUE from not just from the perspective of communication. It also is broad enough to the extent that if there are other telecom identifications, for instance, IP address could be one of them, is used to actually do some other sort of service, that could also get covered under the regulations. It's pretty broad, right? But if you just look at the SIM binding regulations per se, the scope seems to be this perspective, which is if you are using an identifier like a number and then delivering a communication service, an app-based communication service, then it comes under the ambit of the directions that's issued.
Prashant, your interpretation, does the Telecom Act provide adequate sort of legislative backing to treat messaging services as telecom services, or even issue these directions or these rules?
You're on mute, Prashant.
Sorry about that. Yeah, if you look at, how things have developed over the last few years, right from, I would say, the past decade, we have seen this friction between telecom operators and internet service providers. So, for example, to give some context to this, when the WICIT, that's the World Conference of International Telecommunications, happened in Dubai. So there was at least a section of telecom operators who wanted internet services also to be part of the regulations put forward by ITU. That's the International Telecommunications Union. So this is the international scenario. So we even had the European, that's European Telecom Network Operators Association. They come up with a proposal like a sender pays principle. So it's essentially that there's, for example, if you're using YouTube, so you are consuming YouTube, so YouTube has to pay for it. Well, that was the idea. So we have seen this, like there has been this friction, mostly because of revenue issues like revenue sharing and regulatory. Like there was this argument that telecom operators are strictly regulated, but when it comes to let's say internet services, there's like light touch regulation. So that was one of the major reasons. So again, if you look at come from the international scene to the Indian scene, the national scene that we have. Again, this proposal has come from telecom operators, right? So the argument seems to be that there should be some regulation when it comes to services which are in a way competing with, let's say, telecom services. So that is the argument, like for WhatsApp, for example, it competes with their voice and other communication services. So then the whole question is, if you look at Telecommunications Act, now if you read the act as such, the purpose is to essentially to control telecommunications, spectrum, etc. And this is, again, one of the premises, whether you can even come out with such rules, such regulations to control information services, control over the top services like WhatsApp. So yeah, that again is, if at all this ends up in court, maybe this is going to be one of the key questions that will have to be answered. Whether the rules itself, if we look at the cyber security rules, whether DOT has the legislative competence for this. I would also say that this is, if you look at the last few years, we have seen this happening repeatedly. Whether it's the IT rules or all these new regulations which are coming up, new, whatever new controls that the government wants to bring in, being brought out through subordinate legislation and not that much through parent legislation. That also is, I would say, key concern. Thanks.
Just a couple of hypotheticals here, and I would like both of you to address these. What about these services? So, like, is an Instagram an app-based communication service? Is anything that has messaging going to fall within the scope of the directive, going to fall within the scope of these directions that the DOT has issued?
Can I make this a little trickier? What about Bumble? Someone said that Bumble also requires like a mobile number to actually register for it in India. So that also becomes a TIUE. So just to both of you, what is the intelligent differentia between why these apps have been selected and others haven't? Can someone not use Bumble to defraud people? So, just to read out the apps that are covered here: WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, Aratai, Snapchat, ShareChat, GeoChat, and Josh. Josh, by the way, is a video platform. So I'm just wondering, like, is there the application of mind? Is there an intelligent differentiator that seems to be visible to you guys, saying this is why these apps are there and this is why others aren't there?
So look, I think, so Nikhil, the intelligible differentia, I don't think really exists. The government seems to have just come out with a list of apps. And the reason why they probably have done it is probably they're seeing that this is where the frauds are happening, right? Not to say that Bumble is not being used for fraud, but probably the government, it hasn't come to the attention of the government. That's the reason why they haven't done it. Now, I'll try to differentiate and look, what I'm trying to do here is not to justify what the government has done, but to try and make sense out of the regulation, so that this is the way that I'm advising my clients as well. Because a lot of clients operate in both app-based communication and also in operate using login mechanism or authentications mechanisms using mobile number.
Because most people in India don't have email addresses. So a mobile number is a primary identifier for almost all Indian companies.
Absolutely.
It may not be for, in fact, it may not be for global companies, but it definitely is for Indian companies.
Absolutely.
So you're basically saying every Indian company becomes a telecom service.
No, I'm not. So when
TIUE service. would become a TIUE and therefore regulated under the Telecom Act.
I'm not saying that. What I am telling them is, first of all, the question that you need to figure out is there an identification that you're using of the user using that particular number, which is your mobile number, right? And is that mobile use for provision or delivery of service? Like for instance, WhatsApp. If you just look at WhatsApp, my number is integral to WhatsApp in the sense that when Nikhil Pahwa is speaking to Nikhil Narendran, we recognize each other using that mobile number, right? It's been used for identification by WhatsApp and also within the platform for delivery of that communication or message. And what is the government trying to do here? Let's also try to see what the government is trying to do here, right? The government is trying to say that, look, if Nikhil Pahwa is messaging Nikhil Narendran, right? There should not be a Nikhil Pahwa logged in from someone else's computer or some other device, which probably is linked on based of an OTP using your SIM, right? But a fraudster sitting behind and trying to defraud Narendra, trying to prevent situations like that, right? That situation doesn't arise in case of an Instagram. The situation doesn't arise in case of a Bumble, the way I understand Bumble. Since we spoke yesterday, I downloaded Bumble, by the way. My wife is also probably listening to it. So just for caving the purpose, the reason if you find
your purpose limiting your action. Fair enough.
Nikhil Pahwa is the reason for Bumble in my phone. So I tried using that. So they seems to be using mobile number as a way of, not as a way of identification, but as a login mechanism. That is the case of Swiggy. That is the case of pretty much all the apps like Nikhil you pointed out. And that's the way I make sense out of the regulation. I'm not saying that regulation is drafted in the most sensible manner, but way directions are drafted currently, this is the way that I'm making sense of the regulation.
Okay. I'm just trying to find the definition of TIUE and what exactly it is, because the way it's written is TIUE means a telecommunications identifier consisting of one or more of the following characteristics: IMEI number or electronic serial number or any other number or symbol that identifies a unique telecommunication device. This sounds even broader.
So that's basically you're talking about the identifier, right? Then the TIUE definition is that if you're using any of these things, then you could be a TIUE. So you are right, Nikhil, when you look at regulations per se, the cyber security regulations per se, it is broader than that, right? But if you narrow it down to the directions, what I'm trying to say is that, look, the way I'm reading it is currently the directions, the way it's working, it's linked to apps which provide communication service using mobile number as an identifier.
Understood, because in this it says a TIUE means a person other than licensed or authorized entity which uses telecom identifiers for the identification of its customers or users or for provisioning or delivery of services. So for example, an e-commerce service which uses a mobile number for identification is a TIUE, but may not be covered under this regulation, is what you're saying, because this is specific to usage of TIUE for delivery of service, correct?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Kamya?
Yeah, just a follow-up on this, Prashant. Nikhil mentioned specific companies are the ones whose this direction has been sent to. I wanted to understand, does it still apply to app-based communication service providers beyond the companies listed as well? So like, let's say I run an app-based communication service that is not one of the companies listed. Can I then claim that, my company wasn't listed?
Sorry,
Direction doesn't apply
Kamya,
to
I
me.
just saw something else. Can I just go back to Nikhil Narendran in one thing? It says the regulation says, now therefore the Department of Telecommunications, in exercise the powers conferred upon it under the rules, hereby directs TIUEs providing app-based communication services utilizing mobile number for identification of customers or users or for provisioning or delivery of services in India. So in that sense, e-commerce companies are also covered because it's an or, not an and over here. Technically, they haven't named them the e-commerce services, but technically it applies to e-commerce companies also.
So
it's only been sent to these 6 companies, 7 companies, but because it's an or, not an and, effectively, it applies to them as well.
No, no, Nikhil, I disagree with you there.
Okay.
So it says that it's hereby directs TIUs providing app-based communication services. So
Correct. So
basically an
a
app.
Paytm does payments, but it also allows two people to interact. In the same way, again, app-based communication services means communication is data transfer. If you look at the legal definition of communication, so technically it does cover, but you're right, interpretation might be different.
Yeah, the
Because even data transfer is defined as communication under the IT Act, right?
I mean, if you just, if you take that interpretation, then, I agree with you. It's very, very broad, very, very broad to include pretty much everything. I mean,
Means they may not be utilizing it in the definition in this manner, but
Correct.
then effectively that is an
It's a-
arbitrary decision, not a legal decision, not a legally binding decision.
it's a very, very broad decision. And if it tried to sort of extend to that, extend to other companies, there is a possibility to challenge it, right?
Okay.
So right now, the narrow reading, right? If the government also sticks to this narrow reading, it'll be very difficult for us to challenge it. If the government
Correct.
expands
But
it,
you're reading it narrow, government is not reading it so far.
we'll see that. So I
Okay.
mean,
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you, Kamya. Please carry on.
Yeah, Prashant,
Yeah.
just on the question I
Yeah,
asked
yeah,
about.
come in. So, yes, I mean, if you look at the direction, they have mentioned WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, Arate, Snapchat, ShareChat, GeoChat, and Josh.
Yeah.
But see, it's like any other order. Just because it doesn't mention you by name or the company by name, that doesn't mean that's not applicable to you. So if you avoid the provision that Nikhil just read out, if that's the key provision. It says TIUE is providing app-based communication service. So that's the main condition. Whether you are providing an app-based communication service. If you are, then you are covered by this. Also, the second part of it, whether you are utilizing mobile number, either for identification of customer or for provisioning of service. So these are the two conditions. So one, it should be an app-based communication service. And then second, you use the mobile number, either to identify your customers or for providing the service. So even if your name, your company's name doesn't appear here, yes, you'll be covered by this.
How
That
should
will
we
be
think
my
about
reading of it.
email services under the directive then? They can also, somebody can create an email address using a phone number too, right? So
No, but that is not necessary. For example, if you take Gmail, you can
So Gmail keeps
for a
prodding you for
Google
a mobile
account, you
number,
can.
Prashant. Gmail keeps
Sorry.
prodding you for a mobile number, but
It is, but it's
so
it's
if you
not
give it,
necessary.
then it is an identifier technically.
It's not
It's not the only
essentially linked to the
identifier, but it
Gmail.
is an identifier.
Yeah, but like again, so that's how we'll have to read the provision. Like, I mean, what the intention is. You read it
Because
with the
someone's
other
asked,
clauses
is
also.
Google a TIUE for providing Gmail services? Or is the telecom identifier limited to the usage of a mobile number? That's an interesting one. Is a telecom identifier limited to usage of a mobile number?
Yes,
And
see,
email,
if you
it
look
is,
at
I
it,
think.
it's already defined, and what it the term identifier is, it's defined under the Telecom Act, and also now under the TIUE, it shows what all is covered by it. So it's, I mean, as of now,
But
the
email address is not a
covered.
telecom identifier,
It's not.
correct?
It's not.
Correct. Sorry, I just jumped in again, Kamya, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, as of now, it is not covered. So if it is an email service, I don't think it will be covered by this. As of
Okay.
another thing that we were sort of discussing in the previous conversation, but I feel like it makes more sense to ask both of you, and then I'll actually go to Rohini for user
Yes.
concerns as well. But like just one quick question, and then I'll move there. So one of the things we were thinking about was services like Signal, where you can use a mobile number for part of the operations, and you can also choose to use email address. Similarly, Anand also gave an example of a service that can be operated with or without a mobile number. So how do these directions apply to these services? Are they then specific to, let's say, if I have registered with a mobile number, they'll apply to the SIM binding will apply to me as a WhatsApp customer, and WhatsApp is just a example that comes off the top of my head, but you cannot register it, but like for any other service, and if somebody registered with an email, it doesn't apply to them. Is that how it will be interpreted? Sorry if I've overcomplicated this. Nikhil, your mic.
So the way that I would read it is, look, it will only apply to specific instances where you're using a telecom identifier, just like Prashant also mentioned earlier, right? If you are, let's say that there are two parts of your service. One is basically using an identifier like a email address. You can reach out to a user. You can find a user using email address. To that layer, it shouldn't apply. It should only apply to the TIUE layer, which is using the mobile number. So let's, if you look at a Signal, and if I actually tried this with Signal, I couldn't find that functionality where you could search using mobile number. Probably, I think Snap is another good example. You could also search using, nicknames and other usernames. It should not apply to the Snap layer, which applies to the telecom. It should not apply to the Snap layer, which does not use a telecom layer, which is the telecom number, right? So you can, if Snaps gives you the ability to search using an email, then this regulation should not apply to that.
So in that sense, is this a functional regulation or is it applicable to an organization? Because if it's applicable to an organization, then
Not
irrespective of whether.
It is not applicable to an organization. It's basically to a service, right? So a particular service that an organization is doing. Like for instance, let's say that let's assume in a world where WhatsApp and Facebook were sitting together in an org, it should only apply to WhatsApp and not to Facebook.
But
Or let's
no,
say
no, as in if they use no, I'm talking about, for example, Signal allows you to register using either a number or just without a number also, right? If it does, hypothetically. In that case, the regulation is still binding on Signal overall.
Signal for if you are using TIUE.
Because I don't see that carve out saying that, because it says it's applying to a TIUE that uses mobile identifiers.
Yeah.
So it's not a functional regulation, right? It's focused on the organization.
It is, Nikhil. So I think, for instance, let's say that you're using only for that particular layer, right? I mean, you can have different services using different identifiers, and the DoT does not even have jurisdiction to get into an email ID as a layer, as an identifier. It can only regulate aspects relating to mobile number. So to that extent, I read it as a functional regulation, which only governs you if you are using app-based communication service using a mobile number.
Only governs the usage of the mobile number, only that part of the service.
Only that part. Only that part.
Okay, I'm reading it differently, I guess. Prashant, do you disagree with Nikhil or Nikhil?
Yeah. No, I agree with Nikhil. For example,
which one?
Say you, yeah, Nikhil Naren. For example, if you take Matrix, you can essentially how it works is you have a user ID. And you don't need your telephone, telephone number to log in, or telephone number to create an account with Matrix. You use maybe an interface like Element to access the Matrix network. So there, I don't think that will be covered by these orders as such, because you really don't need a telecom identifier. The service does not require that. So Element will not be covered by this. So, but on other case, I'm not very sure about Signal because Signal, even though you can have a user ID, but I believe at the time of registration, you still need a telephone number. I'll have to verify this, but I think so.
Yeah. Also is, yeah.
Okay, they have sent it to Signal as well, by the way.
Yeah, they have.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, shifting a little bit. I'm sorry to make you wait, Rohini. One of the things that I wanted to understand from you was that basically this regulation makes mobile phone numbers a permanent identifier. And there are situations where a person might need to, change their mobile number. And for now, at least, let's say a service like WhatsApp, it allows that to happen. So I can move my current WhatsApp account to another mobile number as well. So, how does a lock-in to a mobile number sort of impact user access to services? What are the repercussions of having mobile numbers as a permanent identifier?
So some of this has already been discussed, lock-in and the loss of portability, and I joined a bit late, so I don't know if things like disruptions of workflows, etc., would have been discussed. But um, uh, it'll impact people who are in a crisis situation. So, say someone fleeing an abusive household, or survivors of abuse, or victims of stalkers and crank callers, and migrant persons, or those in informal or prepaid markets. So people who frequently change numbers, sex workers, for example, for the sake of their safety, those will also be affected, and that translates into more account recovery requests, more calls to support, higher fraud recovery costs, and a degraded user experience.
Understood. So, you potentially see this as causing problems for people, right, in terms of access to services.
Yeah, so like you say, someone is fleeing an abusive situation, uh, they need a phone, for uh, you know a number of things, being able to access help, or just be able to buy a bus ticket or something, uh, or like finding where they are, and the nearest train station, or something like that. But like in that situation, they really can't be doing this switch over between one sim and the other.
So, what sort of exemptions do we need then for emergency communication or all the sort of communications that you've referred to just now?
So, the emergency communications exemptions can only be made for things like government designated emergency numbers. But how would you know that someone is in this sort of a crisis? And if they are trying to reach out to personal contacts, now that will definitely be affected. The emergency services and helplines, gender-based violence, mental health, disaster response, they I mean, that sort of exemption can be made, but not for personal contacts, or say professional ones. Uh, uh, like you're not say calling the official number of a service, but calling somebody over there. That is not possible, right? That level of exemptions.
Got it. Shifting back to the legal section a little bit. Prashant, how do these regulations sort of intersect with the IT Act and the DPDP frameworks? And Nikhil, jump in after Prashant talks about this as well. Just want to understand both your perspectives.
See, the earlier thing that I mentioned about this, whether this should come under DOT or not. So that is definitely one question that needs to be considered, because the area which DOT can regulate, it's very clear as to it has to do with telecommunications. And when it goes to something like information services, it's mostly comes under the MeitY and the frameworks under the Information Technology Act as such. So here we are, seeing kind of an overlap, where essentially what they're trying to regulate here are information services, are essentially all OTT services. So, and that too under the framework of the telecommunication. So whether that can be done or not is something which needs to be figured out. Maybe if there is a challenge at some point of time, this is something I foresee would also be before the court. So that's definitely something that we need to take into consideration at that point of time. But then again, questions about DPDPA. I'm not sure about see again whether this results in more data being collected. That's I'm not very sure. Again, the apps gaining access to more data, that may not be the case here. Yeah, but again, as far as these apps are concerned, they are anyway will have to be governed by the provisions of the DPDP Act and the data protection provision. But apart from that, just because of this order, I don't think it raises any specific issue with respect to DPDP Act. That's my.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that, I don't see any issues with respect to DPDP or IT Act for that matter. And the way that I'm reading the regulation is that, look, I'm reading it narrowly. So from the way that I'm reading it narrowly, because of the fact that these apps are using these mobile numbers to provide a communication service, I don't see unconstitutionality there. I don't think it's an IT Act issue. I think it's probably an issue that could be handled. Also reading along with the whole of the rules, the security rules, which talks about the fact that, look, there is going to be this platform set where you can go and look up the KYC of the users who have done to identify a number against a particular person's identity. I read it together, and with that narrow reading, I have a problem. But if the government in fact extends and goes broad, like Nikhil says, expands communication very broadly to include other apps where the mobile number is not used an identifier. I think that'll be a very broad reading, which could be questioned for unconstitutionality. And also, just to add another point, I think there's one point I think I couldn't come in after that is that, look, I read it slightly differently again with respect to these apps which have been issued this direction. It is possible for the government to expand this list, right, and send it to like 6-7 other players. But I think the way that I'm reading it is again narrow to those entities which have been issued directions so far. And the reason why I'm coming to that conclusion is because of the fact that if you look at the rules which talk about government's power to issue directions, they specifically talk about entities to which the direction is issued, right? So it's open for government to expand the list and include other apps. For instance, let's assume that maybe another app is not featured at this point of time, maybe a Telegram, if Telegram is there. If it is there, okay, there's maybe some other chat app which we're not familiar with, that could be added onto this by the government. And so far, the way I'm reading it, if you got this notification, you need to comply. And if you're not got it, then obviously you need to be prepared for something in future, but you don't have to comply as of day to day.
So I'm a little curious about what happens in case of doxing, for example. And to all three of you, are there particular situations where people need to change their mobile number that will get prevented by this? Just from pure rights perspective, what are the risks that we see for people? Because at this point in time, they are in a position to change the mobile number and yet retain access to the communications and the social graphs so that exists on many of these apps. But following this, it may not be possible.
So I haven't, Nikhil, I haven't looked at how the porting of data happens because I haven't changed the number in a long time. So I need to go through that process to figure out whether a doxing issue happens. I need to change my number. Would this regulation prevent me the access to the existing data that I have is something that we need to think through, and probably a portability measure should be enabled if it's coming of me porting the data. I definitely see your point, and it can actually impact my ability to continue to use my old account because of the fact that it's linked to a mobile number.
Prashant, any issues from a rights perspective here?
Yeah, I'm not very sure about how the doxing issue happens. I mean, if you change the number, I believe
as in you've been doxed, right? If let's say someone's been doxed, their personal mobile number has been published by an anonymous account on Twitter, or for example, and this is the worst case scenario, but we've seen this, that for a woman, someone's written her mobile number in a men's toilet, right? And then she starts getting calls and messages and needs to change the number. Loses her, I mean, this is just, for me, this is one example. It just loses her access to her friends, and she has to start over again then with the app. And WhatsApp is now core to what people do.
Yeah, see, I mean, again, WhatsApp, I believe, has this feature where you can change your number, right?
But
You
in
can
this case, you
port
won't be able
port-
to, right? You
Yeah,
lose your account
that's
if the number
that's exactly
changes.
what I would like to know, because that is more of an app level feature, right? You get a WhatsApp with your new number, which is linked to your older number, if I
But
get it right.
so technically, right now, it looks like you
Yeah.
won't, because it's linked to that particular SIM card.
Yeah, that we'll have to figure out, because if that's the case, then yes, I mean, again, a lot of features of WhatsApp, like companion app, for example, like might not work. So there are definitely there are a lot of issues with the SIM binding directive. But yeah, this could be a scenario. I'm not sure. Unless we try this out and we have, I mean, finally this directive becoming operational, we will never know.
Okay. Rohini, any thoughts on this?
Yes. So, uh, of course, if SIM binding is made mandatory, then at the app level, in terms of its design and architecture, some changes will have to be made to address this. And some things that I can think of, I'll talk about them, but also then talk about why those would be a challenge. So if they could have so allow for number migration without loss of messages, uh, but also like giving a grace window, during which both numbers are accepted for login or verification. And if and have something of a safety mode for docs numbers. So if I mean, they would obviously require something like a evidence that this number has gotten publicly exposed without consent, escalated to a safety migration workflow, and then like immediately force change the number and accelerate support for it. With anonymization of previous metadata, and suppress notifications to groups where the attacker or attackers are present, and provide low friction support, and identity verified recovery. So human review for safety critical cases, using minimal PII, and privacy conscious verification. So something like a secure video call to reassign accounts without exposing the victim. Now, of course, these are product and policy measures. Actually doing them is going, is hard in a country as large and diverse like ours. Like you mentioned, very few people, relatively few people use email. Everything is tied to the phone number. They and you know. So there's no fallback option that, okay, if we can't contact your phone number, then is there a fallback email or something to go with it in such a situation? And that requires the user to have enough digital literacy, know-how, and the whole process, the whole workflow to be available in their language. Now, I'm not aware of what the Indian language interfaces of all of these apps listed specifically are like, but it does happen in some software that the translation of the text in these interfaces is of poor quality. And therefore, it's hard to understand, and becomes less usable, even though in theory that language is supported. Um, Also, there have been cases of victims of image based abuse. So, these are private images, nude or sexually explicit in nature, that were not intended for circulation, or even images of videos or photos of sexual assault that were leaked. And the victims got harassed over social media, over the phone, by perfect strangers and also by people they knew. And that happened because those images were circulated with the photos and some of their personal information, in some cases a phone number, in private messaging groups, or they were sold for money, on groups or like one on one. And then like there were men trying to contact those victims and harassing them and asking for sexual favors and making lewd comments and so on.
But what does it have to do
Um,
with sim binding, Rohini?
that's no, so that's a doxing scenario where you don't have a public, you don't have proof that the number has been publicly exposed.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So
because
there
it's
is no
not in a
recourse in
public
that case.
toilet. It's not exposed on Twitter, for example, or it's not scribbled in a public toilet. Like you can't prove that the number is being circulated along with,
Understood,
these
understood.
images.
I've understood. Okay.
And also, Nikhil, I just looked up while this was going on. So WhatsApp has a specific FAQ which gives you the ability to change number and still get access to your old data. So it's possible.
Correct, but that goes out the window with sim binding, right?
No, it doesn't. How will that go? So
Because
you're
if you change your sim, you lose your account
no,
because your account is
just
bound to the sim.
no. See, you found this account is bound to the SIM. So let's say that
Correct.
this particular number,
Hmm.
that account, because it's bound to that number, it is bound to the SIM which gives you that number, right?
Correct.
When you get a new SIM, right, you put the data from the old account, then
Sorry,
you
what
port
do you do?
data from existing account to the new account,
But
right?
you're not able to port it because it's bound to the sim, right? That's the whole idea behind sim binding.
No, Nikhil,
Like you can't set up a, you can't set.
I don't think that's the case here. What it says, so let's say that you have two numbers. You have two numbers. Your first number has some data, right? Then you have a second number,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
you have a different account.
Hmm.
Based on an OTP on the old number, you can port the data from first account to the second account. That's how WhatsApp imagines their workflow.
Correct, and that's device binding.
That is device binding.
Yes.
And once this new account, so you're deleting your old account because you're most likely you're also just discarding your old number as well in the process, right?
Huh. Yes.
Get a new number, you get a new account in WhatsApp, you get
Yes.
SIM binded to the number, then WhatsApp as a process will transfer the data from old account to new account. So I'm sure
I
they
don't think they, but do they have a provision for you to transfer your old account to a new number?
yeah, that's what the FAQ seems to say. I can just ping it here. I don't.
But then I'm just wondering whether sim binding will act. That was my question. Will sim binding prevent that from happening?
So look, I'm sure that there has to
Because
be
account portability is not envisaged. In fact, that's what sim binding is trying to prevent.
No, I think Nikhil, I think the difference is very different. So SIM binding is not trying to prevent Nikhil Power from two SIM numbers, right? Or two different WhatsApp accounts. You can have two different WhatsApp accounts, even with SIM binding, right? You just have two devices or two SIMs for that matter. So
I'm not sure that's technically correct, to be honest.
it is correct. I mean, the point simply is that you have a WhatsApp account using a particular number that should be bound to that SIM, which is mapped to that number. So you can have two accounts or three accounts if you can have three SIM numbers.
Okay.
So the regulation doesn't say anything about the fact that you can't have multiple accounts. Multiple SIMs are possible under Indian law, even as you know, right? I mean, telecom law
Yes,
says that
multiple SIMs are possible, but an account is linked to a SIM. I don't think. Okay, I just think if an account is bound to the SIM, then there is no provision for unbinding, right? In a sense.
no, so we can delete that account. You can move the data and delete that account, or keep
Again,
the data and keep the.
How do you move the data is the question to a new SIM?
That's the WhatsApp has a policy around it, which says that you get an OTP in the old number and you're able to move to the new account.
Okay.
I'm sure when our friends move abroad, you get this, or they change their
Correct.
number.
And my understanding was that's actually a use case that gets shut down because of this.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm sure there's some tech development that they may have to do to work around this, but that's not what the government is trying to solve.
Okay. Kamya?
Prashant, I was just curious, does the proportionality or necessity arguments from the Puttaswamy judgment sort of apply here? How do they apply here? Thoughts? I read your piece from Manorama, so this is just
Yeah,
coming from
so
that context.
So the argument that I tried to make there was essentially, let's look at the order completely. Initially, the government talks about what they're trying to do, what they're trying to prevent, essentially trying to prevent cyber frauds, etc. And then they come to this solution. So is this the best way to do it? Is this the best way? See, you have this objective that you're trying to achieve, but then is this the best way, or I would say something which causes the least inconvenience to the user? That's what you should go for. Is that exactly what they are doing? Is the question here. So that is where the proportionality argument comes in, where I mean, of course, you have a law, you have maybe a legitimate scenario where you need this, you need something like this. But the question is, if you have A, B, C alternatives, should you choose this alternative which causes maybe a maximum inconvenience to the user, maximum difficulty for the user, whether it is a normal user like you and me, and maybe a businesses? All these sections of society are affected when you have a new direction like this coming in. So is that required or not is the question. So that is where I was banking on the Puttaswamy and then Radha Basin judgment, say that you should look at the proportionality principle, figure out which is the least intrusive kind of a mechanism, or least mechanism which causes the least inconvenience to the user. Again, while achieving what you're trying to do, the objectives with respect to cyber fraud, etc. For example, in one of these discussions, one suggestion that came out was maybe you inform the user. Somebody logs in from a different account, somebody logs in from, and then location, for example. You can have a pop-up on your screen or something of that sort, which informs them that there's a new person or somebody who has logged in. Like what happens with your Gmail account. You logs in from a different device, you get a notification. Again, even now you can see that on WhatsApp. You can figure out which are the linked devices, etc. But something like that. So there could be such solutions. That's where you need to have this consultation with the concerned companies, concerned organizations, with the public, and then maybe try to come up with solutions. Yeah, we do agree that there's a harm that government is trying to prevent. But yes, is this the best solution for that is something that needs to be discussed and debated.
Nikhil, what, according to you, are what will be the cascading effects of this direction across different sectors, especially in the context of persistent, login sessions no longer being viable?
I mean, see, look, there are multiple, right? And I agree with the fact that, look, I think if you had actually done a consultation on this, then there could have been some innovative solutions which have also come out, and the government need not have been prescriptive about finding this problem through just one solution, which is SIM binding. Look, many of the problems and issues that will also come up would have come up, which we are not able to probably imagine in this room of people. But having said that, look, I think the web WhatsApp direction on the second part is probably the most ridiculous part of that direction, the way we see it. Because the fact that, look, it completely kills user experience and takes away the benefit of having a web login for any of these IM-based apps, right? It's saying that, look, every 6 hours you log out a user, and every 6 hours you to again log back in is totally pointless, right? Look, there are other ways again. I mean, it's clearly an indication that, look, there are other ways in which you could think about ensure there is no fraud happening. Prashant gave multiple examples. Prashant gave multiple examples. Similarly, there could be different ways in which this problem has been solved, and they clearly haven't thought through. Look, there are many edge cases where are many problems which arise out of this. One aspect is the fact that, look, there are folks who are not that digitally literate, who rely on their kids or grandparents to actually operate some of these apps. Those flows could be affected. So there could be different ways in which this regulation will throw up new challenges, right? That is for sure.
What's your assessment of impact on WhatsApp for business?
It's got an impact because WhatsApp for business relies on this, right? I mean, large number of businesses in India rely on
API-based cloud service access, because one argument that was made was that access is not impacted because that is API based.
It is API based, but it's still linked to a phone number.
It may be
Correct.
linked, but it's not persistent linkage, right? In the sense, it's a cloud-based link.
Correct.
It's not on also it's not on device. It's not on the cloud-based server.
It's actually on. See, so WhatsApp for Business also is on your mobile. You can also use it on your mobile, and it's
Correct.
anyway
But most people are like automating on the cloud, right? There.
correct. It's
So that's
automatic.
API based, so that will go. That will not be allowed.
That will not be allowed. That's a web-based login, right? So that's a web-based login, and that will definitely be impacted. So there will be a huge number of business that will be impacted by way of this. I mean, it's a very good point, Nikhil. So in fact, WhatsApp on web will definitely 100% be impacted by this. So these are all the challenges, and probably WhatsApp on web will have to be logged out every 6 months, every six hours, which is a huge disruption, right? I mean, for
No,
someone who
because see, today you actually have WhatsApp automation tools available. There's software. There are
Correct.
entire businesses in India that have been built around enabling SMEs to reach out to clients, and sometimes buy-ins, like entire like order taking happens using WhatsApp for Business,
Correct.
and not through a mobile number, but through an automated client server interface. There's a full CRM manager that manages the entire communication. So once a link is established, once you've done an authentication, even if this happens entirely on cloud, not on your phone, and those are like web-based apps that I've seen. So all of that, basically that connection then becomes invalid.
Invalid. It becomes invalid because it's ultimately linked to a mobile number, right? So it becomes invalid, and that's going to be a huge disruptive
It's
of this direction.
it's not even just private companies, even government services for that matter. A lot of services are now delivered through WhatsApp.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, for example, the codes. I mean, I get interim orders which are uploaded on my website, sent to
Yeah.
me on my WhatsApp from the High Court WhatsApp number.
No, but is it like an automated software that's gone
It's
from
an
the
automated
website?
thing. Yeah, it's
Okay.
an automated thing where I get the moment it's uploaded on the
You get an
website,
alert.
I also get I get an alert and I get a copy of the order on the WhatsApp.
Yeah, when we book flight
My
tickets,
number
we get
which is linked
PDFs
to
on.
WhatsApp.
We get
Yeah.
PDFs from when we book flight tickets as well
Right,
from
right.
MakeMyTrip
Something
and
similar. And what
Indigo
I'm
and
saying
all.
is even government is using it.
Yeah,
So imagine courts using it and other services like other let's say government departments using it. And again, how this could affect all of
understood. Kamya?
Yeah, Rohini, coming back to you a little bit, how do you think SIM binding sort of affects the elderly users of services like WhatsApp or Telegram? And these users may not necessarily remember to, recharge their SIM within the specific recharge cycle, may not, be alert enough to sort of ensure that the SIM is consistently valid as well. So, yeah, in that context.
Yeah, so if they, if they, miss recharging the SIM, or it expires, then their account access gets revoked, they get locked out. They cannot contact their essential contacts such as caregivers or doctors or banks. And there's also cognitive burden. Understanding and following complex validity rules and periodic reauthorization. I mean, I see that as creating confusion and anxiety, especially in that demographic. And elderly persons may lack the digital literacy or may not have the technical support in their family or social circles, um, to perform re-verification, and they may not be able to navigate OTP flows, or mobile number verification platforms. And also, like, something in my previous answer I could not finish was that platforms can offer certain mitigations, and I'd named some of them. Um, um, yeah, and some additional ones are the ability to suppress searchability and reverse lookup in the terms, if there's a case of doxing. But all of this is quite, resource intensive. And given that trust and safety teams have been laid off or downsized, and given their general speed of response when it comes to safety related matters, this is going to be really, really hard to achieve for the platforms, and it's going to be hard for the people affected by these sort of scenarios to be able to, work through it, even if platforms implement these mitigations.
Speaking of, the measures that Rohini is mentioning, Nikhil, what economic cost should platforms, like platforms that the direction has been sent to, anticipate from these requirements, from forced log hours to SIM checks? What are the likely increases they'd see in sort of implementing these directives?
So look, it's very difficult to predict what their exact cost is going to be because it really is going to be depending on the stack. But it will definitely be an impact for sure, right? There's going to be a cost implication. There's going to be a significant amount of technical and engineering uplift that they'll have to do to comply with these regulations. But look, the way the government is looking at it is this cost of doing business, right? So it's a change. It's a significant change. It may have other effects. WhatsApp Business we discussed, the web logout we discussed. There may be changes in with respect to existing UI UX that's already there, including the data porting example that we just spoke of. So there are several of these changes that they'll have to implement, and it's going to be quite a big uplift for them.
Understood. Prashant, what trade-offs do you think emerge here between fraud prevention objectives and the continuity of services to legitimate users who rely on these services, who rely on cloud-based workflows or cross-border account usage?
To
Yeah,
come
I
after
mean,
this, I just want to bring in Pavit because Pavit has a question as well. Maybe he can
Yeah,
just
sure.
speak up on that.
yeah, you have, I mean, many cases like where people are affected, people traveling abroad. We talked about businesses. You have many cases where people who are living abroad but then come back to India on at frequent intervals, they still keep the India number for using their WhatsApp. All those could be cases where they're affected. And again, business, for example. One thing I would like to do is I'm not very sure how the WhatsApp API could work. Again, this I would like to check with Nikhil Narendra also. See, will that be considered differently from an app-based service? Because when it comes to WhatsApp API, you don't essentially require an app. That can work independently of an app. So will that be considered differently? I mean, I'm just thinking aloud. Like, or will
it's a TIUE, no? It requires a mobile number, though.
Again, it is a TIUE, but then it is not an app-based service, right? It can be. I'm not saying it cannot be, but I'm just thinking aloud, like just to figure out whether, because if that gets involved, then it's like a huge industry kind of getting disrupted. I'm not sure whether the government would want to do that.
So I think the way that I'm reading it is the way TIU is involved, and it is linked to a mobile number, right?
It is linked to a mobile number, no doubt.
So if it's independent of a mobile number, I think we can definitely say, for instance, we can comfortably say that a Microsoft Teams or Zoom is not covered under this, right?
Well, here's the thing, Nikhil. This is where I think Pavit can come in. Pavit, I don't know if he can speak, but he makes a point that the Act defines telecommunication identifier, meaning it's a series of digits, characters, symbols, or a combination thereof used to identify uniquely a user, a telecommunication service, a telecommunication network, elements of telecommunication network, telecommunication equipment, or an authorized entity. This could mean that metadata such as IP addresses, IMEI number, and not just phone numbers.
That's the broader definition under the rules, right?
That's a broader definition under the rules, but
No,
I think in
it's
this case
under
they're
the
limiting
Act,
it to. In this case, they're limiting it to mobile numbers and IMEI number, I think.
Correct. So the TUI definition is fairly broad. I agree with you, but it doesn't have the direct linkage with the directions, is what I'm saying. You're right. I mean, it's very broad, and there are also penalties under the act for tampering with telecom identification as well, right? So it's a fairly broad concept which is there in the act and the rules.
Nikhil, the definition that was read out by Nikhil Pawar, I think that refers to the definition under the Act of telecom
That's a
identifier.
telecommunications identifier, but in this case,
Telecommunication
it's specific to mobile number, not more than that.
Yeah.
So you're saying direction is specific to mobile number, right? That's what
Yes.
you're absolutely.
Yeah. Kamya?
Yeah, one sec. I wanted to understand, and this is based on our conversation in the past, Prashant, how would these regulations sort of impact startups or smaller businesses, including smaller messaging services, if we were to believe that the directions would extend to them?
Again, I mean, as far as how it affects businesses, startups, which are not in this way, which are using WhatsApp or something similar, definitely they'll be affected. But if your question is specifically on a startup which is looking at providing a messaging service,
Yeah.
then I mean, my reading of it is that it would also affect them because the moment it is like open-ended, saying that these are the, if you are providing a app-based service, app-based communication service, which is using a telecom identifier for providing this service or for identifying the customer, then yeah, any new startup which comes with maybe something competing with WhatsApp or something, not just WhatsApp, I'm saying anything which provides a communication service as such could be affected. I mean, I would think that if any order, even if it's not sent directly to you, if it is available and which is publicly available, my reading would be that it could be applicable.
So I just want to answer a comment that Professor Rakesh Mehrotra has made in the Q&A. He's saying that very critical and highly confidential government information is shared on WhatsApp. And interesting feature is that US companies are obliged to provide access to their servers to the Department of Defense or anywhere in the world. Professor Mehrotra, WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, which means that it is not decrypted on any server, and it is highly stress tested because it uses the Open Signal protocol, which is highly stress tested for any kind of leakages globally. And so WhatsApp the data on WhatsApp, if it's stored on servers, WhatsApp cannot read it and the US government can't read it. That's the idea behind end-to-end encryption, that only the person sending and the person receiving have it in a decrypted format, and it's not possible to access it in the middle. There is no man-in-the-middle attack possible in case of end-to-end encryption. So I don't think this fear that you have, I think, is not based on at least how WhatsApp is known to function using a open source signal protocol.
Then you could get access to metadata, and that could be quite a lot.
They can get access to metadata, just like the Indian government can also, under 69, I think section 69A, they can get access to metadata.
69B.
69B, they can get access to metadata.
Yeah, another interesting question from an anonymous attendee here, which I think we could probably take up. They're talking about the amendment rules, the TIUE rules. They say that the rules allow the government to suspend telecom identifiers issued to the person. Is there any impact of suspension of telecom identifiers on app-based communication services? If authorities pass those orders, how do we expect a communication app to identify if the user has any other identifier issued to them beyond the one that has been suspended?
So I think broadly, I think the idea is that finally they'll also be utilizing the KYC and the MNO platform that they're planning to build to get that information, right? So I think that's what the government is anticipating. I think once that platform is up and running the way that they're imagining, they will expect these identity to probably do a lookup. If you look at the cybersecurity rules, they also talk about the way in which that lookup is done. That's not so much detail is available so far in terms of what this platform, this MNO platform, is going to really be like, and what are the various features of it, etc. It's only a broad, sketchy outlook which is provided in the rules. So, so I think what will probably happen is if you are on the long side of the law or the government, then probably they can issue this direction and then block your number and the account, and the entity also will have to block your account. This is the sense that we can gather from these rules, which are, as you know, very sketchy as of now.
Another question which I think might be worth discussing for us, how practical is it to enforce this direction, the SIM binding direction? How will the government sort of go about checking that an app is continuously bound to a SIM? Will compliance certifications be required for platforms, or will they do anonymous checks?
So look, I mean, typically when government issues these directions, I don't anticipate the government, going and actually doing an audit on each and every phone to see whether it's actually SIM binding is happening. But they'll probably seek informations with respect to the technical architecture and the sort of at least to some extent the proof nature of the SIM binding technology that they're planning to use. So they may seek information with respect to it, other than, of course, the compliance that the government expect these entities to come disclose. And now, of course, there are audit-related provisions in the Telecom Act, which is unlikely to apply to the scenario. We have very extensive overreach per se, but that also potentially be something that the government could look at in case they want to audit the systems of these entities. I haven't paid a close attention and done a deep dive on how legal would that audit be on this layer, basically the app layer, because it's typically done on telco and customers who use telecom services so far. But yeah, potentially it could also extend to these entities which are using telecom identifiers.
What are the panel's views on convergence of regulations, which is what is happening in this case, and the larger question of how this directive speaks of DOT's intent to regulate OTT communication apps, even though they were that was not the intent of the legislature. This is going also, I think we should go back to, because both of you were not there at the time. Nikhil mentioned the statement that Ashwini Vaishnav had made at the time when the Telecom Act had sort of come out, which was that OTTs will be covered under the IT Act. They have been and they will continue to be. Things have changed. So yeah, just the context of this question, I think. Prashant?
Yeah, see, I think I mentioned it initially when we started this conversation. So it comes, I mean, if you look at the recommendation from COAI and what they wanted, they also mentioned about regulation and how this was about the way apps are regulated, way OTTs are regulated, and these are like light touch regulation, and where the need to regulation, and that was again linked to cyber fraud. But then you could read that what they essentially wanted was these apps also, these OTTs platforms also to be regulated. So yes, this friction is only likely to continue, maybe get worse over a period of time. But yes, so we will also, the fact that this has come after after telecoms wanted the SIM binding to happen, and the government kind of agreeing to it. So definitely there is going to be friction, and there is a friction, and then I expect that to continue also. And when it comes to convergence of regulation, that is exactly what the telecoms want. But whether it is feasible or not, that's a different question. Whether it can be done under Telecoms Act, I don't think that can be done. Yeah, maybe Nikhil was mentioning it, which is just limited to use of telephone numbers, which is then regulated by the Telecom Act. Yes, maybe to an extent, but not, I would say, beyond that.
So there's one of the people from the telecom industry that we spoke with. We tried to invite them to speak here, but pretty much everybody declined. Is that as per the Ministry of Home Affairs, and I haven't seen this data, 95% of digital arrest cases are coming on web-based apps, and 70% of 23,000 crore scam is happening only on one platform. So if the fraud problem is concentrated on one platform, is it overreach to restrict regulations to expand this to multiple platforms? Like, I don't even know how many active users Aratai has, but it has been sent this notification to apply SIM binding.
See, again, if you look at the classification of significant social media intermediary in
Yes.
the IT rules, maybe we could have had something like that. We would looked at least some kind of a threshold where you have these many users. That could have been an option. Yeah, maybe you could have looked at. But otherwise, if you just even without any threshold, if you
I mean, significant social
single
media
out one
intermediary, Prashant,
platform.
is 5 million. Come on. It's 5 million. What is 5 million in a country like India? You
Yeah, I
launch
do
an app
understand. See,
and put some money on advertising at a cricket match, and you will cross 50 million. Yeah, at
but
least
see,
registered users.
now, if you are just going to target one platform, I don't think it will stand the scrutiny of law. Then that will be a case of discriminating just one platform again with others who are offering similar kind of services. Maybe not that many numbers, but that could be difficult.
Okay, fair enough. Kamya?
Yeah, there's one question, and I mean, I'll address it a little bit, but if any of you want to add to it, somebody's asked if this would push apps to sort of move from using mobile numbers as identifiers to email-based identification. On that, I think we did an event when Amol, we'll get to you just in 1 second. On that, I just wanted to say we sort of brought this up during our discussion on the draft TIUE rules. And what we heard from applications at the time was that people predominantly in India use mobile number as identifiers, and that's how they log into services. So, moving to email would be not practical for them to sort of onboard people.
Amol? Amol, you can unmute now.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, can't see you.
Okay, I think there's some problem. Anyway, so I think my limited intervention was that are there also risks of vulnerable users like dependent users reducing the usage of such communication, OTTs, and communication itself on internet, which can.
Could you give me an example?
So, for instance, we have talked about seniors and dependent users and persons in distress and others.
Yes.
Now, if this SIM binding goes into sort of action, and these people are unable to use apps like WhatsApp or others for communication, and because they used this for convenience and reliability, and they are not so comfortable with using other modes like, say, email, etc. Are we then pushing them out of the digital ecosystem? Is this a real risk that we should be also considering? Thanks.
My sense is, and maybe someone else wants to jump in on this also, my sense is this will apply only in situations of vulnerability. So there are exceptional circumstances that we have explained where they may not be able to reuse their account or use their account, and they may lose access to the social graph in some situations. The transfer policy that exists may take some time. It's not like most of these apps and services, and WhatsApp has that. I don't know if the others have it. Does not really kick in, and sometimes it takes weeks and for social media platforms to respond to people. We've seen that happening. Sometimes they never respond, or you get an automated response, right? So it's in those exceptional situations where someone's particularly vulnerable, where this is a risk, I would say. I honestly don't think it'll prevent people from using it if they're only using it on their mobile phones. It'll impact people who are using it on the web. But that's just like my take on it. I don't know if anyone differs on this.
So there are cases of shared devices within families. Say a family of 4 or 5 or more are using a single device, and sometimes these are multi-SIM devices. So 2 SIMs, dual SIM, sometimes even a triple SIM. And I see that being affected because uh, they may SIMs are cheaper, their devices, and prepaid recharge. So they may be using multiple SIMs with the same device, and then it'll collapse that multi-user functionality where, say, 4 or 5 people are using the same device. So there is just one WhatsApp number and one WhatsApp account, but like the all the uh, um, uh, in general, given how everything is tied to the phone number, and OTPs, it could impact those low income households.
I think also there are you can have also on single devices, people do have multiple accounts on a single SIM as well. So I guess multi account usage might, but then multiple accounts will be bound to a single SIM then. So I'm not sure whether that will be a problem for you. It doesn't, it says that the account has to be bound to the SIM. It doesn't say that multiple accounts can't be bound to a SIM.
Okay.
But can you have multiple WhatsApp accounts like in one device?
Yeah, you can add other accounts. Okay. I think Aarti has a question on whether this increases cost of compliance for platforms. I think we've addressed that question, right?
Yeah, we have.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it in terms of the questions I had. If anybody else has any questions, please go ahead. We have a couple of minutes left.
There's one question here that says, how does it impact non-Indian mobile numbers? Let's say people from outside of India who come into the country, does it impact them?
It wouldn't, because it's an Indian mobile number DOT regulation, right? So it shouldn't ideally.
Okay. So then that doesn't address fraud using international mobile numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess that's all that we have time for. Thanks, Nikhil. Thanks, Prashant. Thanks, Rohini, for joining us. And we will be writing about this discussion. There is no public consultation, and I think that's one of the problems with how some of these orders have been coming out. In fact, they haven't even been made public. We've only received them from some of the recipients in multiple places, including Sanchar Sathi. So I think it would be useful if DOT actually opened up to feedback and did public consultations so that they understand the situation and the impact better before they issue such far-reaching orders, because I understand that it might not be second nature for them to use the internet. Maybe they're still on SMS and regular phone calls. But for many of us, the internet is a primary mode of communication. And so, because all we get on regular calls and messages is spam or scam, so perhaps it would be better if they actually spoke to people who understand the internet, including MeitY, before they issue such regulations. So thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone else. And I'd like to thank Snap and Meta for supporting this discussion. We'll have stories out on this next week, and hopefully something happens before 90 days after this regulation was issued, and perhaps DOT does a rethink. They've already done one on Sanchar Sathi. Maybe I hope this one is next. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.